Yeah, that's right. We'll make it a nice How are
It's not just a copy. That's his
So what, so we go shape it in such a way that planning point of view, this is fine. Not necessarily.
You're not big enough.
Everybody ready? Good evening.
Yeah, I got the
Call the meeting to order. Let's rise and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ally, could you please read in the certificate of compliance?
Time, date, and location of this meeting was published in the Asbury Park Press and posted on the bulletin board in the office of the Township of Lakewood at least 48 hours in advance. The public has the right to attend this meeting, and reasonable comprehensive minutes of this meeting will be available for public inspection. This meeting meets the criteria of the Open Public Meetings Act.
The roll call, please.
Mr. Grunberger. Mr. Garfield.
Here.
Mr. Franklin.
Here.
Mr. Sable.
Here.
Mr. Flansbrough.
Here.
Mr. Herzl.
Here.
Mr. Renner. Mr. Eisenman.
Here.
Mr. Graffos. Here. Mr. Meyer.
Okay. Confirmation recording status?
Yes, the recording is on.
Camera, everything's on?
Cameras are both on as well.
Okay, thank you. Swearing in with professionals?
This is where I'm testifying that you report for the visual conference, not like this. Right,
And memorizations of resolutions?
Yes, may I just for a moment before we get started, I did put in front of a couple of board members, Mr. Garfield, Mr. Franklin, Mr. Graffos, and Mr. Grunberger, a copy of a statement about listening to the recording or the transcripts. If you did that for the Herzog application, I just didn't want that paper to get lost in your pile. We can address that when we get up to that application.
That's, number 5.
Correct.
Okay.
There's just one for them to decide.
I was here for the meeting.
There were 2 hearings on that application.
I
One was
haven't
back
missed
in
it.
March.
I haven't missed the meeting.
Yeah. I think John was here.
Yeah.
I think John was here both meetings.
Yeah, I think we discussed the
March
sewage.
March 20th, I don't
Yeah,
have,
drainage, yeah.
I don't have Mr. Franklin acting on anything on March 20th.
Is that the one meeting that you missed in the last, maybe he just didn't say? He didn't vote on anything?
No, I don't have him marked for anything on the 20th, that was quite some time ago, though, March 20th.
So it's a long time ago, I don't know. Okay, we'll see.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll have a quorum with Anna.
Okay.
We'll listen to it.
Okay.
As of now, we don't have a quorum, right? On that application.
Unless some of them, I'm not sure who was listed before you, has not.
Angela did not listen to it.
Okay, I know Mr. Isaacson was working on it. No, I'm sorry, Mr. Grunberg emailed me and said he was working on it.
Okay.
Signed it yet,
So,
so, okay.
Wait and see.
All right, so we could continue with the resolution?
Yes, please.
The first is SB 2274, which is a major site plan for a school. Mr. Barber is the only one who can't vote on that one.
Okay, that's the motion. Move Mr. Franzman. And, say the second, all in favor?
Aye.
SB 2010, amended major subdivision, I have Mr. Flansbrough, Mr. Brenner, can I vote?
Okay, that's the motion. I will move second, all in favor?
Same.
SB 2287, major site plan, again, Mr. Flansbrough, can I vote?
Moved and second, all in favor?
Same.
And then for the last 4, everyone except for Mr. Isaacson and Mr. Rappus is eligible to vote.
I'm not voting on number 4.
Okay.
And I have to make a comment about number 7.
Okay.
Number 4, SB 2289, major site plan.
Have a motion? Number 4.
Yeah, 4 people.
Go ahead, remove. Okay.
Move for a second,
Okay. Move, you have a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Not voting.
Same here. Mr. Grunberger, I don't have you as eligible to vote on the rest of these resolutions, so just hold on, okay? SC 2008 is a clarifying resolution for a major subdivision.
Move. Second. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
We're actually gonna skip number 6, SB 2241. I've been in touch with Mr. Auerbach on behalf of the school, they owe escrow, and at this time, I'm just looking for a hold on that, they're taking some time to pay us on that. So we'll move on to SB 2184, which is a phasing of a previously approved site plan, Mr. Jackson has some comments on that one.
I received some correspondence from the applicant, attorney, and from their engineer. They asked for they added that they would allow 3 dormitories on the second floor. And their engineer provided a letter that said that they would meet the flow requirements for their septic system. So they wanted us to phase it so that they could occupy the building instead of they would stay within their flow requirements, flow limitations. So I added paragraph C.
Just to be clear, the maximum on phase 1 would be what's allowed by the health department on the septic tank.
Yeah. So what I added was the applicant may construct and use 3 dorm rooms on the second story. The flow capacity of the second system allows same. This shall be verified by the board engineer and the appropriate authorities. Only the first floor basement will be used during phase 1 as well as the 3 dorms mentioned above. Common space needs to be finished. The applicant shall allow inspections by township officials to confirm that the premises have not been used except as outlined. What is allowed in this paragraph relies on the data provided by Glenn Lyons by letter of July 10, 2018, and that letter will be made as part of the resolution to be broke out. So I just wanted to point that out. That was added in as the applicant. Apparently the school, they're getting kicked out of the school, and they have to get started on construction of the box. And they believe that this will meet
I'm okay with it as long as it's within the limits of what's allowed by the health department.
Yeah, they're gonna be under the 2,000 gallons a day. So that's-
Right.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, they're subject to the health
Okay,
department.
well, that's what it is, 2,000 gallons.
Right. So,
All right, move.
you move, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, thank you and thank Mr. Jackson for those changes. Appreciate
Okay, you're
it. I
welcome.
just had a question about 6. Was that being held valid?
Yes, I've spoken with Mr. Auerbach, the applicant owes us escrow, they're aware of that fact, we're not taking any action until the specific order is made.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you. You will hold it. Okay. On to number 5, ordinances.
Item number 5, we have a resolution from the committee, resolution number 295 regarding, this came up in the master plan that was adopted last year, which permits, R75 zoning standards for existing campus applications. You should have a copy of that, resolution and the proposed ordinance in your file there for review.
You know, I got a question on that.
Yes.
That's spot zoning.
I don't recall if we discussed that at the time of the master plan discussion.
You know, but there's always been a rule about spot zoning. And I certainly think that comes under the rule of spot zoning.
It is incorporated into the master plan that was adopted by the board, so I imagine that we discussed it at that time, but that was almost a year ago, so I don't recall. I understand your point.
I don't remember it.
What do you recommend, Mr. Jackson? That we do the whole area? What?
Huh?
Mr. Franklin, what do you recommend?
Well, you can't do it.
Mr. Chairman, if I could speak on that,
Go ahead.
because the township committee, the township attorney, and the township planner did have concerns with spot zoning. And
Okay.
spot zoning is when you do something just to one person. And that's why they tweaked the language a little to say completed application. They feel there's no issue with the spot zoning. And the spot zoning has other criteria as well, that it has to be a use that's not permitted by the zone. And if you remember, this was something that the planning board said in the master plan, because they said if there's a campus approved where you can have 28 units per acre with nobody paying taxes, it's better for everybody involved, and even the public was in favor of it, to be able to have an option that could be replaced with R75, which would be paying taxes, it would be simple paying taxes. So it's a reduced density, and a non-big financial impact that
Well, then you could take the R75 and put it in any location in.
Well, no, because it closes the door, with the completed application has to be, presented prior to the adoption of this ordinance, which is Thursday night. If this board recommends it to the township committee adopts it Thursday night, the door is closed and it's not.
Yeah,
Brian, is that a square block or is it part of a block?
Well,
You have a map showing how it lays
Well,
out?
it doesn't lay out. Somebody, if they have at least 3 acres and they submit a completed application, the completed application is very thorough. You need traffic study, you need environmental study, you need everything on the list, and it's got to be complete. And you can have a campus that leaves like 1 block out of the campus that's not R75. And, you know, that would be a little problematic for the one person that has the one thing, but they can always come to the board and ask for relief.
No, that's what I'm saying, if you do a square box, a full block, not a half a block, R75, half a block R10, doesn't make
Well,
sense.
you could certainly make a recommendation to the township committee that they include, if as part of this, that the R75 component would extend to the entire block.
Can I just,
Yeah, sure.
Chair?
Mr.
So,
Flansbrough.
if we hashed this out at length during the master plan hearings. And from what I recall, is that there were certain areas where you had either approved applications for campuses or areas where you had completed applications, where the residents in those areas, they spoke very adamantly against having any sort of educational campus, because we're talking about several hundred apartments between the various applications. So therefore, there was a recommendation by the board, by this board, to say that, you know what, if you have either an approved campus, or if you have some sort of completed application, you have the option of either building that, you can build it,
Right.
no problem, or you could go to R75, which is a drastically reduced density, and that was something that the people in those neighborhoods,
They were the ones who
I think they actually clapped when we
Well,
said that. So,
they asked for it, and you got a standing ovation.
so that's my recollection of it. So this is this is basically.
And the township
this is the-
committee just
this is
made
the
it so that-
implementation
Yes.
of our recommendation.
Yes.
So if we want to expand the R75, we can do that, but
I
that's
just
not
think
what-
that we shouldn't split a
Right.
block in half, we should square it out.
Well, I hear you, and I'm not disagreeing, but I think that's for another day.
I think ultimately, just as a reminder, what the board's job is to do with respect to ordinances
Please be quiet in the audience, we cannot hear.
is to review and comment on whether or not you feel they're in accordance with the master plan. So you may have opinions one way or the other, but ultimately, what the committee has to abide by is whether or not the ordinance complies with the master plan recommendations.
Note that this is not meaning that it's going to pass or not pass. The governing body can pay attention to or disregard the planning board comments. It just gives the board the opportunity to make a comment collectively.
And this was,
So-
this was drawn up by the governing body based on based on our
Yeah, based on-
recommendations.
so the-
And, I don't know if we want to rehash the master plan again, because our beards got grayer. So
I don't want to do this.
And there's one
His
question.
beard is still dark, because he wasn't here.
Mr. Jackson, if we do recommend this change, it's still subject to any improvements done to Cross Street.
Well, no, what happens is the planning board says, yes, you find it consistent or not consistent with the master plan.
I know,
Say it's
but
not
we-
consistent,
Yeah,
it's not
sorry.
consistent with the master plan is determined by the planning board. It has consequences, then the governing body has to adopt it by a increased majority, and they have to give reasons for it in order for it to be valid if someone were to contest it. The board certainly has the authority and the right to make comments. So you could say you do find it to be consistent with the master plan, but we recommend that you make the following changes. So it's just an advisory thing that the board does to the governing body.
Okay, but it was, you didn't answer my question. Originally, when we said that any new work any zone change on the other side of Route 88 cannot commence until the infrastructure is fixed up.
I do not believe this is considered a zone change. They're not changing the zone.
But that's what I'm questioning.
So I do not think that this approval, which was approved before the master plan anyway as the campus, I do not think they would be subject to those requirements.
I don't think so either, no, and that wasn't part of what we talked about
And I
with
think,
regards to this.
And I think O'Brien is saying that it's a decrease in density. If anything, it's a plus, not a.
Yeah, you were talking about 700 apartments versus 75 duplex, whatever it was.
In my personal opinion, the only thing I would recommend for the township committee, I don't like to see a block half R75 and half R10. They should square out a total area. No, this is R75, this is
The
R10.
board's welcome to make any recommendations to the township committee they want. The township committee, they
That's my opinion. Okay, so any other questions on this? So we have a motion on it?
I'll move to, I guess, recommend,
Could we-
adoption.
Can we add that it should be square blocks?
Okay, yeah, I guess, including my,
That makes sense.
included in the motion could be.
I'm asking you, if you want.
I have no problem with that, township committee could look into possibly incorporating more area.
To square it out.
To square it out, to our 75.
Do we have
Another
a,
recommendation of the chair?
do we have a second on that? I'll second. A second, roll call.
Mr. Grunberger.
No.
Mr. Garfield.
No.
Mr. Franklin.
No.
Mr. Sable.
No.
Mr. Flansbrough.
Yes.
Mr. Herzl.
Yes.
Mr. Isaacson.
Yes.
Mr. Graffos.
Yes.
What's the time?
4-4. And I don't know if it's required to have a unanimous board vote. We can probably report to the committee that the board is divided on whether or not they find it to be in conformance with the master plan.
I think that the normal Robert rules is that if a motion doesn't pass, but we're not.
Right.
It's not an application.
Mr. Jackson, you said the township override.
That's a question, I don't know. if you
Yeah,
want-
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, I apologize, but looking at the resolution from the township committee, it talks about how we're supposed to prepare a report. So, I guess 4 of us essentially are saying, yes, go ahead, no, nothing to report, and then 4 are saying report something. I mean, so can you just write a letter memorializing what the concern is?
Well, I don't know what the four dissenting members, or the 4 members who voted against it, what their concern is.
I think Mr. Franklin was, he said spot zoning.
Okay, is that what the other four members are?
Okay.
I need more time.
That's an awful precedent to set.
Okay.
I want to put a Wawa on 14th Street and Hope Road. Could you spot zone that area for commercial for me?
I hear what you're saying. Well, I'll write the letter and I'll say that the four members who voted against were concerned about spot zoning, and the four members who voted in favor felt it wasn't considered conventional.
We also felt because it was less density that we should recommend it.
Okay.
That's the reason. Brian testified to that.
Yeah, typically what I do after this, more often than not, the vote's unanimous, so I simply write a letter addressed to the committee and the clerk and the attorney saying the board was unanimously in favor of the proposed ordinance, and I leave it very general with that. But in this case, I can certainly draft something with a little more specifics, indicating the board was split. I'll run it past John with his review, maybe the chairman before I send it out, if anyone else wants to see it, certainly.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I don't know, we passed it, whatever.
We do have.
Next.
We do have two administrative minors on the agenda next, but I'm actually going to be holding on those. I'm sorry, Mr. Flannery, I had emailed Nahama earlier today. I didn't think to include you on that. Some of them are in the area where there were recent road vacations, and there's concern about making sure that those vacations are properly reflected on the maps. The tax assessor had concerns about block numbering and all of that, so we're just going to hold off on them for now. Sorry, you carried those all the way out here. So we can continue on to our first public hearing item with the chairman's consent.
Yes, please.
Okay, we have up SC 2277 for SES Cross Street. This is an extension of a previously approved minor subdivision to adjust the lot line. You have a copy of the map and the application in front of you. It looks like Mr. Pepper's here to answer any questions that you have.
One second.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Hold on. What is it? Terry, I'm sorry. Terry, did you write any report on this?
Just an extension.
I just want to give you the courtesy.
So again, Adam Pemberton, the applicant.
Yeah.
We actually went back before the board recently to clarify on the resolution some questions. They're actually almost done with the resolution compliance. I know we usually have to put onto the record the reason for the extension. And again, the reason is just we're working through resolution compliance to get it done. We should be able to, as soon as we wrap it up in probably the next, I'm going to say 60 days or so, the map's going to be ready for filing. And that's the reason for the extension.
So you want it for 1 year?
It's a 1-year extension, yes.
And are you being held up to perfect?
There were some questions during the resolution compliance. We actually had to come back to the board to clarify one of the items, one of the waivers. And so it took some time to go back to the engineering office, and we finally said, you know what, let's come back to the board, the correspondence. So we did that 2 weeks ago.
So you have been active on the.
We've been actively working on it.
So, but you submitted resolution compliance, and it just took time to go through that process.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the extension? Mr. Grunberg will move.
Second.
Mr. Grunberg, second, roll call.
Mr. Grunberger.
Yes.
Mr. Garfield.
Yes.
Mr. Franklin.
Yes.
Mr. Sable.
Yes.
Mr. Franklin.
Step up.
Mr. Hurkle.
Yes.
Mr. Isaacson.
Yes.
Mr. Grappler.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 2.
Number 2 is application SP 2288.
Congregation Mahzika Hadas.
Thank you very much. It's a major site plan for a synagogue located on Ocean Avenue.
Submission waivers.
Yes, please.
As indicated, third page of our letter, the submission waiver requested, includes the submission to the county planning board, topo contours of area equals 400 feet, and the EIS, as indicated in our summary, we support the waiver.
Okay. We have a motion to go along with the engineer's recommendation on the waivers?
Yes. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
And then under zoning, variances are necessary, including the rear yard setback, the number of parking spaces, relief from the perimeter buffer requirement, as well as parking within 500 feet of road.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Adam Pemberton, about the applicant. As indicated, it's an application for a house of worship, along Ocean Avenue. I just want to point out a couple of things before we get into the testimony of Mr. Flannery. There really is not a shul in this vicinity that people can go to during the week. It's really, I think we talk about a community shul that people are walking to, but this is really along Ocean Avenue, along 88. Probably one of the most closest shul is really what a lot of the homeowners are doing, are walking toward Ocean Point, which is over a mile away, down 88 down. That's what really can't accommodate them. And this is really for all, there's been a bunch of approvals and housing that's either under construction or going to be constructed surrounding the property. There are sidewalks, and we'll get to all of that testimony. There will be a kiddush room downstairs, I won't call it a hall, but it will be for it will be for members only and for Shabbos and for holidays, use only. It's not for outside renting. And with that, if I can, swear in Mr. Flannery.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm testimony that you give
I do. Brian Flannery, Jackson, New Jersey, licensed professional engineer and professional planner. As indicated, we're here for an application for a shul. The variance relief that we're requesting, the rear yard setback is to the platform for the step. The actual building is 15 feet away, as required by the ordinance. With respect to the number of parking spaces, as Adam indicated, the basement is only going to be used by members, and it's only going to be used on Shabbos and holidays. The parking that it's indicating that we need the relief for is as if it's a full operating every day of the week. And additionally, the number of parking spaces is based on the board's recommendation during the master plan process that once you get over that 800, you provide those 8 spaces that you were allowed to get away with, and then you got to provide the rest of them. Previously, for a 1,400 and change square foot shul, we'd be here saying we only need 14 parking spaces, and we provided well more than that.
Mr. Flannery, under C1, if you were to require to meet the parking requirement, what would that do to the shul?
We have to make the sanctuary small. The actual building should stay the same. We have to shrink the sanctuary or eliminate call the basement unfinished and say that we don't have any facility in the
sanctuary. Would that be inadequate?
Yeah. Yes.
So we're promoting an inherently beneficial use.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
How many on-street parking do you have there?
You don't have to worry about anybody talking about, complaining that people are parking on the street. They're not even blocking the sidewalk.
You only park on the street one time. There's a total of 27 parking spaces for the shul, which has a sanctuary.
There's 27 required.
Yes, 17 provided. 27 would be in accordance with the ordinance. And I think Adam also mentioned the character of the neighborhood, that there's people that can and will be walking there. Relief is also required for the perimeter buffer. 20 feet is required. We provided a fence. This applicant has met with the neighbors. They've accommodated the neighbors, and obviously you'll hear when the public testimony comes if they've accommodated properly. My understanding is that the neighbors are okay with the accommodation that's been provided. Relief is required for parking closer than 5 feet from the property line. In order to have a double-loaded parking line, we need 60 feet. The property is only 62 feet wide, so that would be the reason. That would certainly fit under a C1 criteria as a hardship, because you have a property that's only 62 feet wide. And again, as John pointed out, it's an inherently beneficial use. Certainly, the benefits of this outweigh any detriment. Looking through also the master plan of 2017, the vision statement says, encourage growth and development in appropriate locations consistent with established land use practices. This is an area that has a lot of residents that need a shul. This certainly fits underneath that. And then as far as the municipal land use law, NJAC 40:55D2, encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use of development of the land use state, which will promote public health, safety, and moral good. And this definitely does that. Looking at Terry's report,
Ron, just ask you, what's with garbage on this
They have, walkout cans and they have an agreement from DPW that they'll pick up once a week. And these schools, would certainly comply with that. If they have garbage needs that exceed that, they have to get private, garbage.
They're gonna have 30 garbage cans out in the streets?
No, they have, provision there for 5 garbage cans and it's the feeling
It's
that.
enough for once a week?
Yes,
I think they met with DPW.
yes, they met with DPW.
Yeah, good, okay. And regarding what you said before, the main thing is the parking. In the middle of the week, you're not renting out anything?
No,
Like no bus, nothing? Okay.
there's no parking, so who would rent it anyway?
Yeah, that's my point.
Right.
In our conversation with the applicant, we explained that this is something that, there really isn't, we decide to go park on, this is, there's 70 parking spaces.
Can you go block anybody's driveway?
Exactly.
That's right.
So they understood and they find that there's the immediate need for a shul in the area,
Most of the congregants live walking distance to the shul?
There's a comment in the report with respect to the drainage. There is a pipe, John is very familiar with this area. There was a plastic area and a pipe put in, water goes through. We are inspecting that pipe, providing easement across the front of our property, but the water continues to go, which is done all along. On page 6, there's comments from the Shade Tree Commission, and they're asking for evergreen buffers and something to do with the plan. We will do what's required by the ordinance. We think the plan we submitted is appropriate, and we don't feel that the request of the Shade Tree Commission are needed. Certainly, any recommendations of your board professional, we would comply with. And the other comments we will satisfy.
Is this right in, right out?
No.
It's on 88, right?
Yes.
There's one lane.
One lane in each direction. We had a traffic report done. The traffic report indicates the driveway will function. It's not much different than any of those side streets that you pull out of.
Which are fantastic.
But it's the downtown area, and this is limited to a limited number of times per day.
Don't you need DOT approval?
Yes.
Yeah, you need DOT approval anyway.
Yes.
So the state's gonna tell you what you can do.
Yes.
And regarding, I see in the traffic study, it does recommend that only for weekends, no parking.
Yes.
It's not for all the.
I have one other interesting question. Your minimum combined setback is 15 feet, and you have 20. Why?
That's measured to the ramp. We have the ramp on this side of the building, and we've done it on this side of the building to keep away from the drainage that was constructed on the property next door.
Any questions from any board members?
What do you expect the population to be of the synagogue?
Mr. Garfield? Okay, speak.
You asked me about how many people they expect to be there.
Probably about this number, please.
How many?
I guess the sanctuary is only 15.
Seating for how many, Brian?
140 units.
17 cars, it's 5 people per car?
No, people walk. People walking. Right now, they walk a long way.
Okay. Anybody from the public would like to be heard in this? Yes.
I know normally.
One second, okay. You go.
Normally, a large group comes up and should fit into the way we're voting. If I can, just have everybody here who's in support of the shul, you can't just raise your hand, just support and stand to turn out. I don't want to have everyone off the mic and say the same thing. I just want the board to understand
Judge Sarpintelli does not like that procedure, but I do, looking at the time and the number.
That's all I'm trying to say, not that everybody come out and say the same thing. I just invite other people who want to know, like you will. So I just wanted to voice
And
that.
should we see by show of hands how many people are not for the application?
Well, they'll come up and talk.
They're gonna vote.
But the show of hands by my count was 140 people.
We'll open up to the public. Anybody from the public would like to be heard on this application, please come forward. Okay, please state your name for the record and then your address and you have to be affirmed.
Good evening, my name is Elchon Chepansky, I live 352 Bergen Avenue.
Spell your last name.
Schepansky.
Sir, please raise your right hand. Do you affirm the testimony will give you further information to all of the testimony?
Yes.
Please address your comments to the board.
Good evening, my name is Elchon Chepansky. Like I stated before, I live 352 Bergen Avenue. I live right behind the proposed shul on Bergen Avenue. I'm here representing my fellow neighbors who are here tonight in support of this application. This immediate area is in desperate need of a shul. At this point, there are people walking a mile to a proper shul, all the way down to Ocean Point, which is they have to walk along Route 88, which there's no sidewalk as of yet. No sidewalks all the way to Princeton Avenue. There are people walking too, which is about a 15 to 20 minute walk. The neighborhood right now is not the most desirable, if you know what I mean. And those shuls are already so overcrowded. The shuls that do exist are overcrowded with people. There's a great need to open up and come up with a new one. I can't stress enough how much the shul is needed for the immediate neighborhood, especially with all the construction going on now from all sides. It's just not stopping. They're just popping one after another. There's houses coming up all over with no place to pray. In just a 3-minute walk from this property, there are currently over 20 duplexes, which is 40 families plus the basements under construction. That's besides all the people that you see here today. These people that are here today are the people that live there already. There's loads and loads of duplexes that are there. Nobody's living there yet. I also want to stress the need for a catering hall in the neighborhood for Shabbos use. Now, I'd like to underline that it's for Shabbos use. During the week, it's probably not going to be used. It's not the most desirable. You know, it's right on 88. There's minimal parking. There's nowhere else to overflow. So it's really for Shabbos use. People that want to make bar mitzvahs or something like that. Right now, people are making it in their houses because there's nowhere else to make it.
I just want to say, you can't say probably, because if it's dangerous, it can be used.
Sir, you're also not the applicant. The board doesn't, you can't address the operations and what they're going to do and not do. That's been handled by the applicant's attorney. So please just tell the board what your concerns are.
As of now, people have no choice but to make everything in the house, which is very difficult. So on behalf of the entire community that is here tonight, they sent me here to please ask the board, beseech the board, that on our behalf, that you will please approve this application, put up a shul so that we can all have a place to pray, and all the people that are incoming can have a place to pray. Thank you very much, and have a great night.
Thank you very much. Anybody else from the public would like to be heard, please come forward. Is there anybody in the audience who is opposing to this show? Okay.
All right, sir, please state your name.
Moshe Schwartz, 140 Vintage Circle.
That's the name I think I can handle spelling. Mr. Schwartz, please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm testimony you give before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please address your comments to the board.
Okay, I'm currently having issues with the police project over here. I'm supposed to be getting this last lot, last right, basically, back touches the side of the property.
Brian, where's the shul? And which is his house?
I'm sorry. I don't know how well you can see from there, but here's the plan where the school's going, here's the row of duplexes under construction, it looks like there's one on the end.
Correct, yeah.
The shul is your rear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so although I'm in favor of the shul, I understand the place of these shuls, I do have a number of concerns over here. Firstly, like I think one of the board members mentioned before, 15 spots for a capacity of 144, I think is dangerous. There's no place to overflow parking, somebody else mentioned before also. You have Ocean Avenue, you can't park in Ocean, you gotta walk into the throw, it's over. So I think that's unfortunate that that's safety concern. Now, as far as requirements, I do understand that you only require 12 spaces for the shul, but the simcha, 15, which is there, but for the 12 spaces that's required for the simcha, you don't have. So, although I could hear that I'm okay with having a hall for Shabbos, but is there any way we can enforce that?
Deed restricted.
So the only way to do it, as far as I understand, is to not have a hall there, which I think is very dangerous. I think the board should take into consideration somebody coming, a family coming down Ocean Avenue, and wants to make a left into the hall, waiting for somebody to pull out over here because there's no spots, clogging up Ocean Avenue, this is a big danger over here. Another concern I also had is that they also asked for relief on the
Please be quiet in the audience.
They also asked for relief on the 5 feet for the parking spots, the second part for parking the right side. They want for less than a foot, which is basically cars pulling straight up to my property. I wouldn't want to have that 5-foot requirement.
Sir, so I understand you. You see on the map there on the left, you see there's 5 in the first parking space. That's right against where your duplex is?
Correct.
And your concern is with the setback?
Yes. They're asking for relief, they don't want back. They try and get rid of the 5 foot, I want the 5 feet back there. I also noticed that their fence doesn't go all the way up, and I'm wondering why. I wouldn't mind having the fence all the way up.
Brian, could you answer to that?
It says on the plan, end proposed fence at the setback line. Mr. Flannery, can you address that, please?
Well, typically we end it at the setback line. The applicant would be happy to extend the fence if, normally if you would have to do the fence only 4 feet high. If the board were to grant the relief, we could do the fence 6 feet high.
Does that create site triangle issues though, if you put the fence out to Ocean Avenue for people coming in and out of the parking space?
It certainly creates a site impediment in my testimony. If the fence is behind the sidewalk, there's enough room. When you have a busy intersection, people pull up and they're pulling out and moving. This intersection, you're going to pull up, your bumper is going to be just outside of the 88, you're going to full place, and if the fence is behind the sidewalk, they'll have enough room.
Would the DOT have anything to say about that?
The DOT will have something to say, and they may say we can't.
All right, Mr. Schwartz, please continue.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, I would prefer that there not be any simcha unless there's a way to restrict it to just Shabbos use. And I would like that 5 foot,
Where do you got it now? Or where were you planning it out without the street?
so the garage coming up, there's plenty of other stuff around the area. And again, I did start off my thing that I do understand the need for shuls, and I'm okay with being a shul. I'm not saying that we should get rid of shul. I can also get up and say, there's supposed to be a 20-foot buffer, and asking for relief. I'm not going to do that. I'm okay, because I realize we need that. So as far as the structure is concerned, I'm okay. I just don't want some call, and I want to have my 5 feet back.
So to get in and out of the hall, you know,
It's not to do with this application.
And again, the applicant agrees that the Shabbos and holiday, you agree with that resolution of approval?
Anyway, to enforce it.
how do you enforce that?
The neighbor, which says it's going to him, knows that it's in the resolution and may file a complaint.
If you set up that circumstance, it's very difficult for someone to call the police and complain every time and to tell people they can't use a hall like that,
Could it be deed
put it as a
restricted?
restriction, but that's very difficult for this man to rely.
Could it be deed restricted?
It could be deed restricted too, but then he'd have to get an injunction in court, and that's not, it's a very cumbersome. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll see what
No, we
happens.
can certainly put it in, and that will help, and it is something he could rely on, and it is a step the board can take. I just want you to realize that there are limitations.
Yeah, I don't know how the board's gonna vote on
Right.
the simcha at all. I didn't pull the ball. Okay, it's still open to the public. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Morris Winter.
Morris, I'm sorry. Winter, W-I-N-T-E-R. Mr. Winter, your address?
Current address is 424 East 50th Place.
Yeah, but you're buying property right next to it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm the testimony you'll give before the court with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, please speak into the mic, please.
So I'll start off with the first truth. I know many homeowners in the development right next to where they want to build a shul, and they actually didn't consult with anybody. So if we're talking about the truth and nothing but the truth, that's the truth. Another thing. About the simcha hall, is there any other shuls that have such a restriction in Lakewood about that they're not allowed to use the simcha hall on the weekends?
we have restricted.
Yeah, are they enforced?
That I don't know. I'm not gonna.
I know, they're not.
I don't know.
I'm done, finished.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else in the public would like to be heard, please come forward.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Dolphin, title, 222 Ocean Avenue.
Spell your last name, please. Speaking to the mic.
Sir, I have to give you affirmation, or please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony will give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
And it was idleness,
Title. If you nodded your head, I interpret that as a yes. You have to verbalize. Affirm. Thank you. I'm sorry, you're about to
Please
say
speak
your
into the
name.
mic and speak up, and spell your last name for the record.
Heidelbaum, Teidelbaum.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Titlebaum. You can proceed.
I live diagonally across from where they want to build a shul, and I moved in there like 4.5 years ago. I was like from the first people in the neighborhood, but the neighborhood grew by leaps and bounds, and it's flooded, and there's a very, very big need for a shul. And most of the people within walking distance, within like a 3 minute, there's enough people to already fill up the whole shul, and there shouldn't be any need, especially if the main use of the shul is really for Shabbos. During the week, people drive out to other places. The parking is not such a need, and people aren't going to want to go park to the shul because you can walk there, and there's no way to park on the street, so people are going to be walking to the shul. They're not going to be driving to the shul. And the need is a tremendous, tremendous need in the neighborhood, and they're really desperate for a shul. The closest shuls are very far away, and then in the immediate neighborhood, there's no real shul now for people to daven in. And on behalf of the whole neighborhood that's living there now, I know people opposed it are not people that live in the neighborhood now, but the people that are living in the neighborhood very much all agree that we need a shul, and we all are infidus that we want a shul. And if they don't want to, they don't need to move into the neighborhood. It's not people that live in the neighborhood that are coming to oppose us. It's people that are moving in. And the people in the neighborhood are very, very strongly behind us.
Thank you. Anybody else in the public would like to be heard, please come forward. See no one, closes the public.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, before when Mr. Pepper asked the members to raise their hand, I made light of, the board is, and Judge Serpentelli wrote an opinion on this. The board is not to count heads in voting on an application. And I just looked at the fire capacity in this room. According to the placard in the back of the room, it's 220. There's every bit of 220 people standing. We're standing room only right now, and everybody raised their hand. So the chairman always has the ability to limit repetitious testimony, and I don't have a problem with the show of support. In lieu of everybody coming up to the microphone, they'll raise their hand and saying, yes, I support the shul, which is what I think the point of that exercise was.
That was my only intent.
Yes, and I think in this context, it's okay, but I just want to caution the board and charge the board that it's not appropriate to count heads. The person who lives next door, the board has to balance everybody's competing interests. I just want to put that on the record because I made that comment earlier, so thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Flannery, before that, you stated, I think it was Mr. Schwartz had a problem with the variance of 5 feet, that it was too close to his house. Can anything be done about it?
The only thing we can do is make smaller parking spaces.
Make less parking spaces?
Well, we could make less parking spaces, or we could make a smaller aisle. I wouldn't recommend either. I heard his concern with the buffering, and the buffering can be accomplished by a fence. The plan does have a sight triangle for the driveway, and if we stop it at the sight triangle, it's almost at the property line. So that would provide buffer, and the applicant is willing to provide.
What are you providing right now? What kind of fence?
It would be a 6-foot fence, and we should have stopping at the front setback line, which is normally where you stop.
A vinyl fence?
Yes. And that's Otanian is our access, it's not their access, they go out to Bergen Avenue. So this is gonna be a fence in his backyard.
Please shut the cell phone.
And the applicant's happy to put that fence in his backyard to provide him the buffering that we can.
Mr. Schwartz, if they put a high fence, is that okay with you? That would work? Okay. Okay, we'll see.
And just so the board, I did say it when I testified, in order to do the 6-foot fence, we need relief. And if the board's requesting that relief, it's in the catch-all, and we'd appreciate you granting the relief so that we don't have any problems with this resolution. And to the neighbor, if we go to the DOT and they say no, which I don't think they will, because we're gonna stop at the site triangle. But if they look at the site triangle differently, we have to.
I think to be a good neighbor, we have to try to do to help.
Yes,
whatever we can.
absolutely.
On the record.
Okay, the only question I don't know how the board is going to vote, but Mr. Jackson, if the board is in favor of having a shul only Shabbos, how do we do it?
Having shul on the
The hall, sorry.
Okay, I'm just looking, I'm looking at the plans, that's why I'm looking down. So there's a typical hall in the basement, that's how this is typically set up. And you would agree, as a condition, in order to mitigate against the parking shortage, that there'd be a deed restriction and a condition that the typical hall could only be used on Shabbos.
Well, the deed restriction is something that isn't done typically, and the deed restriction lasts forever. The other shuls that we've had approved in town all have a restriction that's in the resolution. I don't think the deed restriction helps the neighbor out anymore. He still has to go and object to the tenant.
So, Mr. Pfeffer, does the applicant agree to a deed restriction to restrict the typical hall for Shabbos only?
They would not agree with the deed restriction, they would agree to a in the additional resolution or two.
All right, now, there are consequences to both. If it's in the site plan, that is enforceable, you could get a summons, you could even enforce it in court. That is something that the planning board and the board of adjustment, and even the governing body to an extent by changing ordinances, might have the ability to change. If you put it in a deed restriction, the only way to lift the deed restriction, in my opinion, that's for the public good, is by going to court and getting a court order. So it does become considerably more cumbersome. It does give somebody who's opposed to it one more avenue of relief. I don't know if, I don't like deed restrictions personally, because I think you're hamstringing future boards from what might be appropriate in the future. But that's up to the board. I think you raised it, Mr. Herzl, as an option. So I just want to let the board know what the consequences.
I'll poll the board to see what they want.
What is the consequence to the developer, the builder, to have it as a deed restriction?
What is
the consequence to him to have it?
To release a deed restriction, you have to go to court. I think only a judge can release it.
In my opinion, if it's in the site plan and it's a condition, the neighbor could write his own complaint in court. He could get the zoning officer to do it. He could even, in my opinion, go to court and get an injunction, just like he could if it were a deed restriction. But it being in a deed restriction does alert future owners that it's a condition. But I think it becomes a lot more difficult to get rid of, which might be a reason for putting it on. But that,
I'll poll the board. Mr. Grumberger, are you okay with a hall only for Shabbos or no hall? What do you?
I'm okay with the shul. I think it is very dangerous if there's not enough parking.
For a hall?
Yeah, I'm nervous there.
Mr. Garfield, what would you would say no? Mr. Franklin?
Please for the deed restriction.
Mr. Franklin?
Who owns the shul? Is the owner of the shul here, whoever runs the shul, the rabbi, is this me?
Yeah, I think.
Is that okay if I ask a question?
Yeah.
Of course. Is that okay?
I have no problem. But
Sir, please identify yourself.
Israel Oldbaum, my address is block 23 Bergen Avenue.
Israel, I think we know how to spell it. Please spell your last name.
Oelbaum.
Raise your right hand. You affirm the testimony you give before this morning, the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes.
So I'm trying to put you on the spot, but if we grant an approval condition upon you only using the simple on Shabbos, there's a lot of people in the room and you're under oath. Would you use it during the week?
Absolutely not.
not for bris, nothing?
discussions that we had, everyone says that we don't need it, we don't want it, we have the same concern for during the week. There is no parking. Why would I want to bring all my
I just wanted to
family
hear
here?
from
There's no parking.
I wanted to hear from the person that actually is in charge, that runs the place, so, okay.
Yeah, that's, we don't expect, we don't have income, we didn't put into that to come from.
But you have to understand, somebody's lobbying in your shul and wants to make a bris. If you won't be able to make it in the morning.
We won't give them permission.
Because on Shabbos you don't need parking, but during the week you need parking.
It's for Shabbos, that's what it's for.
Okay.
That's what we need it for.
Then I'm okay with having it called for Shabbos or something.
Oh, is it so?
Adam, truthfully, I would have liked the application better with 0 parking spaces. That's my honest opinion, because then I don't think anybody would have any notion whatsoever of coming to park. If there would be 0 parking, I mean, obviously the egress for emergency vehicles, but the fact that there's 17, it's like everybody's gonna wake up in the morning and think, that spot's waiting for me. And we all know that 99% of them is not gonna be the case.
They're gonna, in all honesty, they're gonna end up having to go around the circle, go back to their house, park in their driveway, and walk the 5 minutes, because it's not feasible.
No, I understand, but, that's part of deliberation, and if you think that's an idea, discuss it with the board members and make conditions.
Angela, let me ask you, what do you?
Monthly?
Yeah, when I was in high school, there was a student of the month, we could do that spot for years.
What's your opinion?
What the other board members think about Mr. Eisenman.
Okay, Mr. Garfield, you want to
I'm
ask?
very bothered by the two-way tunnel coming out of that lot. And 88, no matter what they say, is a very busy road, make it busier, and I'd like right turn home.
Well, Mr. Garfield, it's subject to the DOT.
I think we should make a.
We can make a recommendation, I can ask for a motion, you can make any recommendation you want.
I want that restriction also not to be unanimous, the simple hold over the week.
Yes. What do you think?
Again, I do need it for simple hold, but then I have, the sanctuary, people no parking. Somehow the same restriction should be any use.
Downstairs.
Otherwise, yeah, we need more parking.
Okay, I'm gonna ask, we have no objection to this. Again, the main purpose here is the shul, to service the community that's surrounding it. As we indicated, a lot of people in the room here to support and want to go to this shul. And I'll be honest, on Shabbos and on holidays, they need a room to go to. And that's the only purpose for it.
Okay, I'm gonna ask for a motion, but when I polled the boards, some people were against the wall, and some people said with a restriction, so whatever the board says. I would ask for a motion on this application.
Make a motion to approve the restriction of the deed for no use at all.
By the way.
During the week.
Oh,
Not the minyan, not the simple.
You're talking about a deed restriction.
Deed restriction, that's my.
Okay, do we have a second on that?
And the right in, right out turn.
Right, and the gate has to be high.
6 foot gate.
6 foot gate.
Maximum possible.
Okay, are you writing everything down? No? Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, there's no parking, you don't have to worry about the right and right out.
Okay, do we have a second on that motion? Mr. Garfield will second that motion. Roll call.
Can I ask first one question? Just a clarification. I'm not.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the event the situation changes, they either get additional parking or that the zoning requirements change in the township, we would just ask that the delay would be, if you're going to make a recommendation, that it be a deed restriction, and should the circumstances change, and we want to report that it could be.
I think that is something you have to say to the judge at that time, that circumstances change. The thing is, I think the purpose of this is to protect the front and the neighbors on either side of basically the headlights of the car are going to be touching that fence. So.
Well, the fence, we don't have an issue on the fence.
I know, but I'm saying that's how close the cars are to the neighboring property. But anyway, there's a motion in a second, and Mr. Herzl.
Yeah, ask for roll call.
Mr. Grunberger.
Yes.
Mr. Garfield.
Yes.
Mr. Franklin.
Yes.
Mr. Sable.
Yes.
Mr. Flansbrough.
Yes.
Mr. Herzl.
Yes.
Mr. Isaacson.
Yes.
Mr. Grappos?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion approved.
And Mr. Pfeffer, I'll work with you for the language to try to get that. But this is,
We'll take a 2-minute recess. Let everybody be quiet.
Mayor, please ask that everyone who's finished, please take it outside so that we can continue with our meeting. Thank you very much. We have other cases on tonight, and we'd like to move forward with them.
Okay, we're back into session. Okay, number 3.
Mr. Chairman, I think 3 and 4 is going to be kind of done in conjunction.
The next 2 applications are linked.
Okay, please be quiet. We're doing the school now, so please be quiet.
SB 2255 is a minor subdivision to create 2 lots. And then immediately following that on the agenda, we have SB 2295, which is the site plan for a school on one of those 2 lots. I imagine that we'll be hearing the testimony together. I believe this is Mr. Jackson's direction, but as usual, the board will have to take separate action, we'll do separate applications.
Okay, Terry, you have anything?
Yeah,
We'll
what
go
I'd like
through.
to, Chairman,
Yes.
is to go through the zoning of the minor subdivision first, because the board is going to have to act upon subdivision first, which is going to create the lot for which the site plan.
Okay.
So going to our June 25th letter.
Application 2255, SB 2.
Correct.
Right,
Correct.
okay. Anybody in the audience wants to know?
Looking under zoning, a lot width variance is requested for new lot 3.02. And I'm sure we'll have testimony on the waivers for the purpose of the minor subdivision. Now, if I go, Chairman, to the relief on the accompanying site plan application, SP 2295. Our July 2nd letter.
Do we have to act on any of the waivers? No.
For the minor subdivision, no.
Okay.
I'm reading from the corresponding site plan application.
2295.
Our July 2nd reading for SP 2295. We do have submission waivers for topo contours, man-made features within 200 feet, and the environmental impact statement. We support the waivers as is.
Okay, do we have a motion to go along with the recommendation? Moved and second, all in favor? Aye. Okay, approved.
Now, continuing on, this is the site plan application.
Still 2295?
Yes.
Correct. I'm going to skip item 2 since we addressed the lot width variance on the minor subdivision review. In addition to that, for the site plan, there is a side yard setback variance required, aggregate side yard setback variance required, perimeter buffer relief. All of these are for future lot 3.2, which the new facility is going to be on, as well. Parking within 500 feet of buffer. That's for zoning. And then under relief, there is also the design waiver for the perimeter buffer on the westerly side of the lot. Sidewalk is requested That's a waiver currently proposed along the property's Prospect Street frontage and Summer Avenue. And then finally, a design waiver is required with respect to the street trees along 3.01 Prospect Street and Summer Avenue.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Adam Pepper, on behalf of the applicant Accurate Builders, I have the honor of sharing the application with Mr. Doyle, who's going to be getting a site plan for Venosa Dasa. As Terry indicated, the site is approximately 11 acres. There's an existing building on the site. We're looking to subdivide off approximately 3.5 acres for a lot, which obviously now the concern was what is that lot going to be used for, and that is the subject of the site plan application that's coming up. This time, if I can swear in Mr. Flannery. Do you swear firm testimony against the word with the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Brian Flannery, Jackson, New Jersey, licensed professional engineer and professional planner. Three exhibits. A1 is the map of the site showing the proposed subdivision line where 3.4 acres would be created, and the existing building would be on the 7.3 acre site. A2 shows the same thing, and it shows where the parking lines up with that facility, and A3 is the site plan that's coming next with Mr. Doyle.
Which report are you going through?
We're going through the minor subdivision with variance application, looking at Terry's report.
SE 2255. 2255, right?
Yes. Yes.
No, for the, if anybody's following.
So for this particular application, we need a variance for the minimum lot width, the 3.4 acre lot with frontage on Prospect Street at 230 feet where the ordinance requires 300.
Wait, say that again, 230 versus 300?
Correct.
On Summer? Which is going to be the
Well,
parking
the
problem?
big lot, 7.3, has frontage on Prospect and Summer. The new lot has only access on,
The Brian
on Prospect. But there's a cross-access easement, we're going to be able to enter the parking lot.
Please close the door.
From Summer.
So the frontage is on Prospect.
The frontage of the new lot is on Prospect. The frontage, that's only 230 where 300 is required.
I'm sorry, I'm doing the resolution as we're going along, so that's why.
Just one second.
Is the easement noted on the subdivision plan? Is there a note on the plan, or are you going to do a document?
I was corrected, there is no easement. I looked at the parking configuration and thought they were connected, but the parking is completely separate.
Well,
So the new lot with the site plan will only have access from Prospect.
Brian, I just want to get clear for the record. The existing property that you're subdividing the school off, you're not creating, it has no variance, you're not creating any variances.
That is
that correct?
That is correct. 7.3 acre lot, conforming lot, there's an indication in there that we're not doing sidewalk. That's silly, we're gonna do the sidewalk. You don't have to tell us we're doing it, we know we're doing it.
Okay, so just for the record, you're talking strictly as the new lot 3.02, that you may have some variances.
Yes, we have a lot with variance.
And that also is the location of where the building currently sits. That's the reason why we couldn't move the property line over our original way.
Flannery, why should we grant a 70-foot lot with variance?
I'm glad to ask. If you
I have a feeling you came prepared.
If you look at the the master plan of 2017, the vision statement says encourage growth and development in appropriate locations consistent with established land uses, and this does that. As Mr. Pepper pointed out, creating this lot 300 foot wide, we can't do because of the existing building, so it's an existing configuration that doesn't allow us to do it wider. The new municipal land use law, NJAC 40:55 E2, under the purpose of the act, says to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in the state, which will promote public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. And this takes an unused piece of property on a very large lot where 3 acres is required. If you stop someone that conforms with the area, and allows the site plan that is with the next application from Mr. Doyle. So we would be looking for a C2 variance. We have to show it relates to a specific piece of property, and I think the location of this property, the size of the property, the developed nature, and the unused area behind certainly contribute to that. The purpose of the municipal land use law would be advanced. That's what I just indicated. It's in.
So let me stop you 1 minute. So that this configuration encourages appropriate use of property by taking an unused piece of property and allows a site plan to allow a house of worship?
Yes.
It's a school.
School.
Right.
School.
Sometimes I mix school and shul.
Season outside.
Well, they pray involved, they learn involved, so there's a reason that the school and the shul sound the same. We have to show that the variance can be granted without substantial detriment to public good, and certainly you would look at the impact on the surrounding area, and this would have minimal adverse impact. The variance will not impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance, and it's area-wise, it's in accordance with the zone plan and zoning ordinance, and then we need to show that the benefits outweigh the detriments. And it's my opinion that the detriments are minimal, and the benefits are the utilization of the property for something in accordance with that. The other items in the minor subdivision report, we would certainly satisfy the board engineer.
Okay, so Mr. Jackson, we're taking a vote just on subdivision first?
Yeah, but I would make it contingent upon the school being approved, since their purpose, and contingent upon the school going on this property, because they're saying the purpose for the variance is to allow a school. So it's essential that that actually happen, I think.
Okay.
Just approve it, but it's, we're doing that case next, it's all queued up, so.
Yeah, and then open to the public.
We'll make the subdivision application, contingent, the subdivision contingent upon the school building. Is that okay with you, Mr. Pepper?
Well, my testimony is certainly that we're taking an unused property and we're getting to develop it in accordance with the, I think, limiting it to a school. If the school goes away, there's other good uses that we can use the property for. So I think if you indicate that, the property will be utilized rather than this specific.
Just, I can't flip-flop back and forth between the, do you meet the area requirements, not the?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
The only variance created is a lot line.
Mr. Jackson, I'm gonna go back. Can we do the vote later, like then I'm talking to the public twice?
Yeah, whatever you think is appropriate to manage the board's time, you can do.
Okay, I don't want to open the board twice on both applications. Okay. Mr. Doyle.
I'm John Doyle, pleased and privileged to represent Minosa Dasa, and privileged to be with my much younger counsel here, Mr. Professor. You will hear from Rabbi Blum about the present school, the need for a larger school. You'll hear from our engineer, Mr. Lyons, about the meeting of the report, and you'll hear from Mr. Kennel on some very specific traffic issues.
Can you give me 1 minute to get caught up here? Rabbi Blum, please raise your right hand and swear affirm testimony before the board with the truth and the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. BLUM?
Yes. Speaking for Mike.
Yes, BLUM. Rabbi, describe to the board the present school by reason of who it serves, where it is.
Right now, we're currently in Industrial Park, 140 Lehigh. We have 235 kids. The upcoming year, we're hitting close to the number of 300. We are currently up to just finished 5th grade, and it's going to be going up from K through 8th. we have parallel classes. So right now we're occupying 10 classes, and the eventual goal is going to be in this existing building, the future building phase A, 20 classrooms.
The present situation you have is a rental, right?
Correct.
You don't have the opportunity or the land to expand.
That is correct. Space, no space in the building.
So you absolutely need a larger site. What makes this site appropriate for what you want to do?
This site is big enough to be able to accommodate the need of the school.
It is difficult to find a site these days in Lakewood for each school. With respect to the structure itself, I know we're going to phase it. What is the intention of the phase?
Phase 1 is 20 classrooms, which could hold approximately 450 kids. Phase 2 is another 20 classrooms, which can hold another 450.
What's the maximum?
900 kids is the maximum.
900 kids is the maximum?
And the building is L-shaped so that the first phase will be
a rectangle, and then the second phase is
all of the site improvements that we'll describe with the engineer to be done in phase 1. Unless there's some other, let me ask one last question. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the board about your situation? What is the size of the audience speak for itself?
More than that, we don't have to say. But the fact is that we're here. It's a big school, it's a growing school, and simply that we should,
Hold the mic closer, because we have to have a record.
simply that we should be able to accommodate and give our children what they deserve. We are here for to be able to put them in the right accommodations.
In addition to giving the children, there will be, and I know the discussion from the last meeting, a smallish room that will be used on occasion.
That's correct.
Its timing is that it will only be used after 6 o'clock and not at school hours.
From 6 o'clock on, and on some days earlier. During school hours, it's full.
And the parking that would be available here would be in the rear of the building.
I'm sorry, Mr. Doyle, I'm trying to keep up with you with the typing here. You said what's going to only be used after 6 o'clock?
For which you
And there's a separate parking central hall in the back, which has nothing to do with it. Front parking is for the school, the back parking is for the simcha halls, nothing combined.
And as you understand, in this neighborhood, such a small room for appropriate events
It's needed for them. Simply just to avoid the Route 9 traffic. Every time there's some type of simcha in the area, they have to travel out to Route 9. So to avoid traffic, keep it Prospect James, not having to have to go out to Route 9 and try to keep it over there.
Is the Simcha Hall used only in association with school functions, or is it open to the general public?
It's open to the public.
Not during school hours.
Not during school hours.
What's the main function for the Simcha Hall?
Mitzvahs, Shabbat brothers. A mitzvah,
It's not
Shabbat
big enough
brothers.
for a wedding.
No, 4,000 square feet.
Mr. Lyon.
I do. Glenn Lyons, professional engineer, professional planner, Lakewood, New Jersey.
Whose expertise in both of those areas is recognized by your regular appearance before the school.
Yes, that's true.
Mr. Lyon, you're familiar with the site plans were executed under your direction, and you've had an opportunity to review Terry's report as well as the response to which in the earlier phase.
That's correct.
Let me just catch the highlight. The site was designed and the building was proposed so as to be consistent with what we just heard from Rabbi Swan.
That's correct.
With respect to the phases, he stated it correctly in terms of where and when the site improvements will go in.
Yes, the site improvements will all be done first the building will be built in two phases. So the L-shaped building with faces Prospect Street, that portion of the L will be the first portion of the building built, and then the stem, as you can see on the home plan, that'll be built at a later date.
We're voting on both of them? Both phases?
Yes.
You don't have any plans for phase two whatsoever? I don't think so.
I think it's still the plan.
No, the only, yeah, it's architectural for the whole building.
You're right, good. D4. And the site improvements we're showing are with the entire structure after phase 2 being totally built.
Correct.
There's references made in the report to changes in 3.01. By and large, except where necessary as described, that site's staying as it is, and we're talking about 3.02.
Correct.
There's variances and waivers that were mentioned by Hurley at the beginning of the subdivision application and are shown on page 4 of his report. First of all, address the side yard setback, 20 versus 30, and total 60 versus 70.
Clear. Because of the amount of land that was available, as Mr. Flannery explained, we have a 230-foot wide lot. Traditionally, built school, we end up with a 10-foot side yard setback on one side, so that we don't meet the one side requirement of 30 feet, so we have a 20-foot side yard setback. And
which side is that on?
That is on the west side of the building. There's no access on that side of the building. There are basically windows, and that fronts the back of a warehouse building, and the whole side of that building is the east side of the building is not one. It's all loading dock.
And despite that, we're
and then we are landscaping, we'll leave whatever trees we can, and we do show supplemental landscaping along that whole side of the property where the school is, phase 1 area.
And for the same reasons Ryan explained, this is the site we're left with after the building, so we're sort of hardship into the shape we have.
Correct. If we had 10 more feet, we'd be too close to the original building on the property. So it is a hardship that we couldn't make the lot any wider.
Are you satisfied as a planner that granting of those variances would not be substantial detriment to the zone plan zoning ordinance?
I am.
And then the benefits outweigh the
And I definitely feel the benefits outweigh the
with respect to the buffer relief and the setback of the park, describe that really properly.
Their buffer relief and the setback of the park is along the common property line.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lynch, just a minute.
I'm sorry.
The public has to be quiet. We can't hear anything going on up here. Thank you.
The buffer relief we're requesting is along the common property line that we're creating between lots 3.01 and 3.02. Again, that buffer is again a function of the lot just couldn't make it any wider. There wasn't enough land available. So, but the applicant's aware that they're not getting a buffer on their side of the property. Terry's report did indicate a fence would be appropriate. We have no objection constructing a fence. There is a retaining wall along that side of the property, so the fence would be actually a very good idea as far as the safety standpoint.
One other thing, Chairman, you have some gravity difference at that wall. You're also putting guardrail along there.
Yes, there is. I was going to get to that. There is a good.
Can you show where the wall is?
The retaining wall starts about.
Where's the retaining wall?
Excuse me?
Where's the retaining wall?
It's right along the property line between 3.01 and 3.02. And the school side of the retaining wall is the higher side. So we're filling, we're filling on the school side of the retaining wall. So it runs basically from the front property line to the back property line. Because there's such a difference in elevation.
What's elevation?
Well, the west side of the site is 21 to 25 feet higher than the existing parking lot of the building. The building was basically built in a bowl. All land slopes down into that building from the northwest and south.
You need a 20-foot retaining wall?
No, retaining wall is only 12 feet high. But we've taken up the rest of the difference in elevation of the school building and grading on the west side of the property.
So the gate will be on top of the retaining wall?
The fence would be on top of the retaining wall.
Can I, Mr. Herschel, Mr. Doyle, I'm hearing your comment, and you're talking about C1 hardship. I'm having a hard time understanding that. I see your C2 arguments, but how do you have a hardship when you have a blank canvas and a rectangular lot with nothing on it? That you're basically creating.
I'm satisfied that there's sufficient proof on the C2 to grant it, but to whatever degree, I want to make certain that the board feels that there's enough proof to support them on either aspect, that they may be.
Okay, I'm just having a hard time with the resolution coming up with C1 hardship.
I think it goes to something that Mr. Pepper said and Flannery said to Mr. Lyons. You have to look at the entire site and subdivision and our inability to make a conforming site without doing craziness in terms of destroying the existing building. That was not an effect of our building as the would-be user of 302. It's sort of a domino effect that caused that hardship for us to squeeze the building in. The only way that we could meet the language in this plan, testimony, setback, is to have a smaller school.
I understand your valiant argument, so I'm going to put C2 in the resolution.
Mr. Lowe's report makes specific mention in several paragraphs about testimony being needed. I'll emphasize those paragraphs, and if there's other questions from Terry or the board, we'll answer them. Paragraph 3, fencing and safety surface is required for proposed playground. The playground will be in phase 1.
Playground is in phase 1, and the plans do indicate that it will be fenced in with the appropriate safety surface.
In paragraph 4, he mentions that testimony should be provided regarding the existing perimeter chain link fencing with falling wire.
The current site has a chain link fence which runs basically all the way around the property. It's shown on the site plan, probably 20 feet from the parking area. All of the chain link fence with barbed wire will be removed on lot 3.02, and the remainder of the chain link fence will be left on 3.01.
What fence are you putting on top of the retaining wall? What fence did you put?
Well, because we needed a buffer from Terry's comment, we would put up some type of board-on-board or white vinyl fence.
You need something very strong. The gate breaks, the fence breaks. You have the 12-foot drop over there. It's fall. You need a decent.
Well, there's no reason for children to be on that side of the site in the parking lot, in the driveway between the front and back of the property. So, and there is a guardrail there to start with, so the fence will be behind the guardrail. So, I think that'll be it.
I don't think water board is strong enough fence.
We would be willing to.
You need to justify what it thinks on it. You need a strong fence.
Certainly, the purpose of this issue is not only to educate, but protect the children who are there. And whatever the board feels or in conjunction with the building code and its administration, we have to provide a stronger, different type of material, thicker, more denser, more unusable in terms of being able to shine.
You have to understand it's a 12-foot drop off.
No, I understand. I pointed out the 12-foot drop. We'd be happy to review that with Terry, provide something that would meet his requirements as far as safety and,
Okay, continue.
Paragraph 5, testimony shall be provided indicating the existing facility operation will not be affected by the removal of one of the loading docks on future liability.
On the existing condition plan, it shows a loading dock on the west side of the building. That hasn't been a loading dock since the building was renovated several years ago. It was really, the wall was closed off, the loading dock doors were removed. It's really just the ramp that we're removing at this point. The remainder of the building has 3 overhead doors that service the warehouse for whatever it's a A to Z fulfillment center, so that loading dock wasn't used as part of the process. It's also, that's the side of the building the daycare center's on, so that hasn't been a loading dock for some time.
Paragraph 12 asks about the phasing, and he anticipates that the proposed site improvements will be constructed on the first phase, and that's accurate.
That's correct.
Paragraph 17 talks about the trash compactors, their location, and testimony shall be provided addressing refuse storage and collection for future life. 3.01. That will continue as it has.
That's correct. We're not proposing, the only changes we're proposing is on 3.01 is the restriping of some parking spaces on the west side of the building that are too close to the property line. Other than that, we're not making any changes to lot 3.01 except for the sidewalk that we already agreed to provide under the subdivision. The remainder of the site stays exactly the same.
You have the sidewalk on the front, which elevation? The front is no.
No, we'll go from the street and then it slopes down into the woods. I've been out to the site. There's probably 8 to 10, maybe 15 feet of level to slightly sloping ground up before it starts down the hill. Because that was, when they built Prospect Street, they didn't just start at the edge. It doesn't fall off right down the edge of the hill.
3.01 doesn't have any landscaping improvements?
Excuse me?
Any landscaping improvements in 3.01?
No, it's landscape now. There's a lot of existing mature trees.
No, my question was, is there anything additional or something?
No, there's no additional landscape.
On 3.01.
On
3.01.
Yeah, we're putting landscaping on 3.01.
Yes, we are.
Number 17, who's picking up the trash?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
On the site patches, township say they can get to that? I don't think they can.
Well, one of the next upcoming comments, I forget which one it is. They did have Terry had a concern about that. That we don't have enough space for the truck when it pulls in, back in. It goes through the parking spaces on either side. We're going to remove one parking space and then shift the dumpster to the center on it. They'll be able to pull in, back into the space, and then pull back out.
I don't understand. You're going to bring the truck down around and bring it up and then back it in. Hey, it's just not going to work. It's going to take more than 1 foot. Yeah, that's a big truck. You got to pick up a 23-yard dumpster.
Right.
And you don't have the room to do it.
Well, all the turning templates show that we have to. We're not arguing. We're going to show it to Public Works. They want us to remove 2 more spaces.
You have the wrong word.
Okay. Let me know, Mr. Chairman, I defer to Mr. Franklin's security. On the other hand, the templates show what they show. Be that as it may, we purposely have more parking spaces than we with the ability to sacrifice to make sure it works.
It's been submitted to DPW, and we got a review back from them. As DPW approved.
Can I ask the members of the audience, please keep it down because we're trying to make a recording and our record won't be any good. So please take any conversations outside. Thank you.
How many parking spots are there currently in the back, and how many do you need?
I don't know specifically how many are in the back. We need. We have 1 So if we need to remove 2 to make it successful, we can do 4. We could lose up to 4.
Yes.
I have a question on the compact. They're next to the playground. Are you going to do cafeteria, food? Are you going to get over, flies, whatever? I'm very unhappy with the compactors being on top of the playground. Something's going to happen. Well,
Mr. Coffey, isn't the compact sealed? And there's a pipe on they sealed containers?
If they're using the compact,
yes, I'm still unhappy next to the children. Because something's going to happen. Yeah, why not? If we put up, you'll be right.
We'll go with the northeast corner.
Let's put it up a lot, yeah.
That area of the site is sloped down from our neighbor behind, as I described before. It's kind of like a bowl. So
You're talking about safety of the kids. These are little kids.
You can wrap the retaining wall around.
probably switch to the playground and switch to the
Still the kids. Still the kids.
Further east corner, not near the playground, the other side of the park.
In the northeast corner. You can wrap the retaining wall.
Describe that slope.
Right now, the slope on that side goes, should be steep. You can see that the existing slope is probably a 3-1 slope, slope to that area. We're actually increasing it to about a 2-to-1 slope with erosion control fabric, so it doesn't. Have to look into moving it. I understand the board's concern. We will figure out a way of moving.
I have a question about the number of children in the school. Do we have enough room for the buses and load and unload in front?
We believe we do, and we have Scott Kennel as our traffic consultant.
One thing I want to say, wherever you put the compactor, it's dangerous. That should be fenced in. It should be a separate area fenced in. It shouldn't be able to get to it.
It's enclosed on 3 sides because that's, otherwise you can't get in.
I don't want to keep getting into the compactor. Mr. Coffey, yeah.
It's a 3-story compactor.
Wall, yes.
Well, I'm living in a pilot community. We do have a large area. And when they come to pick it up, we have 2 gates. 2 gates that I can get.
Correct.
But it's at the 4 side. No one can get in.
Well, again, we've had meetings with Public Works. Their problem is they have so much garbage to collect in town that they're complaining that they have to get out of the truck, they have to open the gates, they have to pick up the dumpster, they have to pull back out, they have to close the gates. The gates get damaged because, or whatever. We've been requested not to put gates on the dumpster. So we're in line with what they've requested.
Nothing can happen at all. He's talking children, what is it?
It's girls. It's girls. Mr. Franklin, the compactor, it's a front loader they pick it up, or it's a rear loader?
Well, you gotta put one of the big rear loaders and raise that thing up, like, put it up on the rail, bring it down, and
He has to back up the truck.
We'll put gates up, not a problem.
Okay, continue.
I think that the problem gets solved by us saying that as you look at the width of the property in the rear, we will so grade it so that the two needed facilities, a playground for the children and a compactor to remove the garbage in an appropriate, safe way, will be one on each side of the parking lot.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you're holding your number 17, I think.
The next comment was for testimony of 25, adequacy for fire protection. We will.
Yes. We didn't show a fire service water line to the building. That was just an error on our part. Schools have to have sprinkler systems and protect the fire. So that was the
29, testimony regarding additional storm drainage suggesting that water could be trapped on the 301 side. While it's not us, please respond.
Very correctly pointed out, there's a slight low spot along the 3.01 side of the retaining wall. We'll provide some type of drainage to take care of that.
There were a few items that would seem to require discussion. One was fire protection. Signage is mentioned in paragraph 33. While we show no signs, whatever signs we would put up would conform with the ordinance by reason of its size, non-illumination, and location.
That's correct.
Utilities is mentioned in paragraph 32. Whatever is seemingly missing from the plans will be handled during compliance.
That's correct. We'll provide all the necessary utilities to 3.02, and there's some questions about some missing information for 3.01. That's the building is currently serviced by water. It's on site. So it wasn't something the surveyors picked up.
And we recognize that there's certain issues, particularly those mentioned in 27 about stormwater management, 28 about stormwater management, and lighting in 31 that we will comply with currently on compliance if approved.
That's correct.
The city sewer and water?
Yes, sewer and water on Prospect Street, recently constructed.
You can make it with the elevations?
We can make the first floor of the building, make it out to the sewer. We'll have to have a pump in the building, pump the lower level up to the sewer.
You need a retaining wall, it's not big.
Well, if it was possible, we would go through the property and out to Summer Avenue, but New Jersey American Water doesn't allow you to go through easements.
Right.
So we have to pump up.
Maybe it'll be a LTNUA to take them over and we can have reasonable.
Do any board members have any questions from Mr. Lyons? Okay. One second.
Driving through Lowen Avenue. Is anyone who can make the access to back parking lot lower?
That's not our, that's where the steep slope
Throughout the whole property?
from front to back, that property is higher than one. And that's not our property, so we would have to get an easement from the adjacent property owner. You have to do it.
Go. Okay, access open.
But we have to go through, we have to get.
There's a private property here, between us and the next street.
Lot 421.
Mr. Cannon. Thank you.
Swear from testimony that you before the board will be true the whole truth.
I do. Scott Kennel, K-E-N-N-E-L, with McDonough and Ray Associates.
Mr. Cannon, you testified before this board, you recognize your experience and expertise.
Yes, sir.
Your office prepared a report with which you are familiar.
Yes.
You reviewed the site, you had traffic counts, you read the RV report.
That's correct.
In general, can the site operate within standards of safety as prescribed in ITLE standards?
Yes, I mean, mainly Ocean County, as the site's been designed, and I don't know if it was clarified, is that we have two driveways. One will be inbound only, and the west one will be exit.
Explain that on the map.
Sure. So, you refer to the site plan, the easterly driveway is the ingress only. So that, more importantly, for the bus circulation, we create a counterclockwise circulation, and then they'll exit out the process street where it's wide enough where we can have it set up as 2 lanes, a left turn lane and a right turn lane.
Going will be a right and only?
No, you'll be able to make a left turn here. As part of this improvement, we're widening to the county requirement of 26 feet from center line, because Prospect Street has been described by Ocean County to be 1 lane in each direction with a center left turn lane, as well as shoulders along its entire length. So where we're widening, and there's been recent widening on the other side with the residential development, we can accommodate a left turn lane that'll be for eastbound direction into the site.
Let's just break it down. I'm a bus. Show me how I get in and out of the site. Bus to the US.
The bus is coming from the east, whether it's from Massachusetts Avenue or from Route 9. We're proceeding in the westbound direction to make a right turn into the site. Proceeding to the site approximately 120, 130 feet, and then turn left in front of the school building to the drop-off area that can accommodate 3 or 4 buses. And then they would continue in a counterclockwise direction, exit out of the westerly driveway, and make a left turn or right turn depending on what their route is.
How much is the maximum that you could stack in buses? If you use the whole, the whole circle?
We use the entire perimeter.
Yeah.
You could accommodate, I'm going to say approximately, I'm going to go from this mile here to no pocket, approximately 9 buses.
And what's the maximum amount of buses?
Well, they're projecting upon full build-out that there'll be 19 buses serving the site. It doesn't mean they're all going to be there at one time. The critical time period is early in the afternoon, because in the morning, as they drop off, they process and then they leave the site. In the afternoon, our report has stated that students leave between 4:30 and 5, but actually it's going to be from 3 to 5 o'clock. So it's going to be over a 2-hour period. Classes are going to be staggered. And as was stated, they're only going to do phase 1 initially. And as a result, they'll have some information to better program the school schedule as they go to phase 2. But the intent is to stagger over a 2-hour period. You don't have all 19 buses at one time. This is commonplace among many of the schools within the township.
Hypothetically, is it possible for the buses to turn to the back?
Turn back.
You go around to the back of the building and come around.
No, it's not. All buses will be to the front of the.
I'm saying, theoretically, it's impossible for them to go to the back, turn around?
An experienced bus driver, yes. Because it can accommodate SU-30 or refuse vehicles. They'll be an experienced driver. They could, but there's no reason for them to go to the back end of the site.
The reason why I asked you, just in case there's a back of a bus, you cannot have any bus on Cross Street, right? So even if you're not going to have more than 3 or 4 buses at a given time, but if there is a backup, you're testifying that you accommodate up to 9 buses.
Up to 9 buses, and that doesn't even include the easterly circulation aisle. That's from the school building corner to the southeast corner around to the exit.
So technically, if need be, if it's a really busy day, you can even accommodate a few more.
And we also have another opportunity. We have an island here that you can also well below there, so you have 3 or 4 buses there. So there's might be adequate on-site storage of buses.
I do know how the girls' schools work, and it's staggered.
Okay.
But I just want to make sure, in case there's a busy time, that we have room for it.
based on my information I received from the representatives, that they would be staggered.
When a camp rents it out in the summer.
Excuse me?
When a camp rents it out in the summer, there's gonna be more buses.
Well, they have to again employ a staggered schedule so that you don't have the situation.
Not necessarily, but yeah.
Okay, not more than 9, that's,
The circulation plan has been provided, Perry notes in paragraph 9, and that you testified to. Talk about what we've been mentioning.
Well, one, I guess the discussion was on access to the refuge area. Based on the plans presented by New Line, the refuge vehicle can get to the back of the site. There is an opportunity, if necessary, that we could move the refuge area deeper to the west to give it more of a deeper into the site to provide a better turnaround. And we could also strike off additional space on either side so to give them more ease of access. So, I mean,
The concern is quite long, you know, that rail is going to that.
well, that's what I'm saying. We have room there, almost 40 feet, where we can push that back and make some more room.
My question is, children, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds.
Well, that's where.
That's a separate question, I think, and I understand that we're gonna solve that by, putting the playground on the right side or, keeping the playground where it is. You
Well,
weigh in.
I wasn't, I mean, again, I don't know what the discussion, but the matter of flipping the two, I'm sure.
no, to put the refuse head on the northeast corner.
Up here.
North corner. Next corner, that corner.
Okay. I mean, again, which is kind of show that the garbage truck can circulate to the site, so I'm sure we can design to accommodate if we relocate it to that portion of the site to provide access.
So we conceivably move the compactors to the northeast corner, which would require significant regrading, and then move the playground closer to the school. That would both work in the traffic way and create distance pedestrian.
In my opinion, that'd be a positive improvement.
Now, Cross Street, what's your testimony? Prospect.
Prospect, as far as Prospect Street, given the access design proposed here with the one-way inbound, one-way outbound, and the county improvements, the average vehicle delay for traffic exiting during the morning after peak hour periods is going to be approximately 26 to 28 seconds per vehicle. That's a level service D. It's on the lower range of D, which ranges from 25 to 35 seconds. I think what's also important is that we're going to have a dedicated left turn lane into the site, and that'll operate level service A and B, depending on the peak hour.
How many buses can be on the dedicated left turn? How many vehicles?
Well, depending, we're going to be able to accommodate 2 or 3 buses. It doesn't mean all the buses are coming from.
Right.
And the other thing that helps that situation in driving movements, I'm sure you're aware of, is soon to be installed a traffic signal on Massachusetts Avenue in Prospect. That'll help create platoon traffic in the westbound direction and help traffic in and out of the school. Our analysis did take a look at that intersection with the county improvements, and the intersection would operate at level service C with or without this project, so there would not be any measurable degradation with this school fully occupied at 900 students and with its impact on Massachusetts and Prospect schools. And my understanding is the county has a desire to have that signal up and running within the next year. Got our fingers crossed.
Anything else?
Any questions from Mr. Pennell? Mr. Godfrey?
On Prospect Street, the improvements there are both in the 3 lanes, the center turning lane.
Correct.
And the buses, you get times that when you back up to pull in. The turning coming out is right turn only or both?
No, there's going to be 2 exit lanes. We have a 24-foot wide driveway that allow, it's not, we'll add that to the plan, striping to show there's a right turn lane and a left turn lane.
You have, close to, with Tom's River, you have close to 3,000 to 3,500 adults in our community. Right now, it's not a half hour, you have a few kids, but we have a big problem on the traffic. I'm not saying it's not the school, but something has to be worked out with the county to try to keep it flowing.
Well, and that's why they came up with this master plan or this desirable cross-section. For cross-section street is supposed to have a center turn lane or its length with one lane each direction and with shoulders. And they notice the importance of shoulders because of bicyclists are put at
Massachusetts also.
well, but you also have to realize that Cross Street, their preliminary design to improve that, which needs to be signalized yesterday. It's now undergoing. Well, and you have that and other developments on Cross Street.
But to be sure, the county is working in a proactive way to try to resolve as best as possible the future traffic. And what we've designed for this particular site is consistent with that.
Consistent with the accommodation with it, correct.
Prospect is a county road. Right?
That's correct.
So it's subject to county approval.
Correct.
Any other board members have any questions for Mr. Cannell?
Access to building also from the school bus, people going also from the front, not from the side, no access.
That's correct. Because all for phase two, again, those students in phase two portion of the building will be on school buses that are dropped off on the south side of the building, phase one building.
And 19 buses considered phase one and two.
Correct. And that's over, in the morning over a 45-minute to 60-minute period, and in the afternoon it's over a 2-hour period.
I think if that's by maximum, there won't be more than 9 buses. I think you said 3, 4, which I think makes sense.
Right. Well, we can accommodate without
Right.
in excess of 10 buses, but as I showed on the plan, we can accommodate 9 without any impact on Prospect Street.
Mr. Chairman, other than responding to anything, that would conclude our questioning. I know that the call is still aware of Mr. Jackson's concern appropriately, so I won't ask anybody or all of the gentlemen testify. I'd only ask.
Well, I think tonight we're going to do it a little different on this case. We're going to ask if there is any opposition first. If anyone's in opposition to this.
Is there anybody in opposition? Yeah? Okay. And anybody who supports this application? Who's raising hand? Okay. I will start off with opening to the public for the opposition. I would like to deal with them.
Questions or
any questions by any professionals? Let's deal with them.
Questions or comments?
Questions or comments? I mean, you basically see who's forward. Okay. Please state your name for the record.
Yaakov Levy. Last name is L-E-V-I.
Bear with me for 1 minute. Sure.
You'll have to raise your right hand to be first. And then please speak up. Where do you live?
Empire Lane.
What's your address?
9 Empire Lane.
Okay.
What, are you here to talk about the subdivision, or are you here to talk about the school?
Not particularly. I'm not here specifically for the subdivision, but as you stated before, the subdivision and the school
It has to be
work
from
together.
Okay, bear with me for 1 minute. All right, please state your name again.
Yaakov Levy.
Yaakov.
Y-A-A-K-O-V. Levy is L-E-V-I.
What is your address?
9 Empire Lane.
Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm the testimony will give before the board with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing?
I do.
Please
Direct your comments to the board.
speak into the mic. You should have a record.
As living across the street from this intersection, Summer Avenue, for the past 7 years or so, as people have been moving in, Prospect Street in particular has become extremely congested, particularly at peak hours. The gentleman before stated that there was an estimated time of 35 seconds. I can tell you today, trying to make a left, 28 seconds, oh, I'm sorry, maximum of 35 for the level D, I think that was. Today, to make a left out of my development, which is right across the street, took nearly 5 minutes. adding another school, there is a school right down the hall, right down the end of Summer Avenue. There's another school there, a boys' school, which is all year round. There's camps, there's everything. There's also a chasna hall. Was this Simcha hall supposed to be a chasna hall or just a Simcha hall?
Not just Simcha, not a hospital. It's a small hall.
Bar mitzvahs and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's going to add to the traffic at off-peak hours, but during peak hours, the traffic is already somewhat insane. Now, the other exit lane that we were talking about, the double lane, one left, one right, was that only for exit or was that for entrance as well? Was that coming in?
Mr. Cannon?
There's one lane in and two exit lanes.
One lane in. Okay, so that means that people are going to be coming from the east, also possibly skipping summer going in there. There's going to be more people exiting from going westbound onto Prospect, which means that my intersection right over there is going to be more and more backed up. Even to make a right can sometimes take a very long time. Definitely more than 35 seconds, so that be level E.
You think it'll be improved with the streetlight?
With the streetlight where? At Massachusetts or at Summer? Massachusetts and Prospect will definitely have some improvement, but you're limiting the traffic to our development right over here by Summer. I don't believe there's any plans to put a light by Summer. There's no left lane access from Prospect, which means that people are going around everywhere. There's almost, if you want to go straight across from my development into Summer or to make that left onto Prospect is extremely difficult at peak hours. That's from around 8:45 until 9:30, 9:45, and again in the afternoon, which is when the schools get out. So between Karasaran, all the way to the end of summer, and between another girls' school, it's going to be extremely difficult for anybody to maneuver within our development.
Thank you. Anybody else? Let's see.
I'd actually like to interrogate the professionals. Baruch Blavstein, 28 Empire Lane.
Please spell your name.
Baruch. Blavstein, Blausstein.
Okay, I found that people very often, in their questions, also chime in on testimony. So I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand. Confirm the testimony that you may give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Who are your questions for? Which witnesses?
I'm a little bit confused. This mic is very far away. It's very hard to hear everything that's going on, just even because you can't hear the volume-wise. So I'm not sure who said what over here. I don't know names. I can say my questions and the proper professionals can respond.
Questions out, and then we'll let the applicant.
Yes, well, you'll take over. You'll direct it.
Okay, so first of all, I didn't get clear. I didn't see any copies of the detailed plan over here. I only was able to download it, shortly before the meeting. So I don't know if all the information is in here, but I didn't get clear if the professionals that spoke about it. How many parking spots are currently going to be removed from the existing property because of this subdivision? And meaning how many are we losing? I think there might be a discussion of them adding some. So I guess how many are we losing and how many are we going to be replacing? And then also how many will the new structure technically require, and if they're requesting a variance for the off-street parking?
Those would be for both sites. So we have two engineers on this. One of Can any of the witnesses speak to both sites?
I can.
Yes. The lines can?
Yes.
Very hard to hear.
The existing, where lot 3.02 is, there's probably close to 90 unused parking spaces there. Asphalt's falling apart. That's why this part of the site is available. We are restriping some spaces that are existing on the west side of the building. And as far as parking requirements, the parking requirements for the 3.01, which is the warehouse and the daycare center, that requires 70 parking spaces, and we're providing 84. I've been out to the site several times during the day when both operations are going,
There's about 60 parked cars, 62 was one day, 64
So
was another.
regardless of what you're taking away, you meet the parking requirements at 3.02.
We meet the parking requirement and there are
On
exits.
3.02, you meet the parking requirements.
Yes, we do. We have more than our
Spots are there
requirement.
on 3.02?
There are 166 required under the new M1 requirements, and we're providing 170.
Mr. Glassman, what's your next question?
Can you just show me where those 170 are situated? Trying to get an idea of what's going on over here.
There's about 64 in the front and almost 100 in the back.
This is where the existing parking was on lot 3? So you're just going to be like resurfacing that area, kind of?
Completely changed.
Whatever was there won't be there anymore.
Okay.
Basically, on both properties, there are no parking lots.
There are no parking variances. That's
So
correct.
that's the main.
Okay. Can you just also show me again, I'm very unclear, where the entrance and exits, the new ones are going to be, not on Summer Avenue.
There's no exit on some.
On the street, not, meaning on Prospect, not the.
On Prospect, the entrances, one is sort of opposite Nussbaum Avenue, which is New Main Street, with all those duplexes. And the other is halfway between Nussbaum and Tree Lane. So they are almost 490 feet from Summer Avenue to our property.
And I didn't hear what you responded to the previous person. They're both entrances are entrance and exit?
The eastbound driveway is going to be from the traffic court entrance only, and the westbound driveway will be exit.
Okay. So now, anybody who's coming on down Prospect eastbound towards Route 9, are there going to be no left turn signs allowed? Because that's going to block up traffic significantly if people are going to be able to do that.
That's one of those questions where testimony is kind of put in together. But will there be any no left turn signs?
Scott's going to.
Mr. Kennel will answer this.
Scott Kennel, consistent with the county master plan for Prospect Street, there'll be a left turn lane along Prospect, along the site frontage. So left turn movements will be permitted in and out.
And this left turn lane, it'll be along this area, meaning both of these will have left turn and the Summer Avenue, or we're just talking about those?
Well, again, the idea of the county's plan is to have left turn movements along the entire section of Prospect Street. And as developments come online, they're asking them to widen the curve to accommodate it. As specific developments come online, they'll take care of along their frontage. But beyond the site frontage, that's something that has to be the responsibility of the county. So ultimately, Prospect Street here from Massachusetts out to Cross will have one lane in each direction with left turn lanes at those critical driveways and intersections.
I mean, I currently live on Prospect right over here, across from Summer, and I'm familiar with it, and the applicant who finished the property did not actually widen it, or, there are no current turning lane striping over here. So was it widened already? Are they going to be adding the striping over here?
Well, the question there is, was it widened already?
And they're going to be putting in the left turn lanes.
Well, we heard
Part of
that.
that, my recollection, it has been widened to accommodate it.
Okay, next question.
But over here also is this being widened, because this has only been since 2009.
You know, we can't have like a debate back and forth. Question and
It's
answer.
a question, I'm trying to figure out what's going on.
Not as far as I know, that has been widened to their requirement at Summer Avenue. And it was widened when it was developed, but not to the current requirement. I haven't investigated, but without a shoulder, my recollection, you can accommodate a left turn lane. But that would be the responsibility of this applicant, that's the responsibility of the county.
So it's not part of the application to have a left turn lane on the Summer?
Not as part of this applicant. Doesn't mean it's not going to be in the future, but that's whatever the county gets around.
As far as I know, the county wants to do it. The left
The county doesn't.
Mr. Kennel, does that mean that this could be built and the left lane doesn't go in?
That's going to be discussed with the county. Again, the county improvements to Massachusetts Avenue.
But I'm sorry. The testimony, as I heard it, was that these circulation movements are based on there being a left turn lane. What happens if there's no left turn lane?
Well,
You know, it takes 5, 10 years. What happens? during that time period?
Well, lower side frontage, there's adequate room, so basically you have the vehicle bypassing a left turn vehicle.
In your opinion, is that a safe circumstance?
Given the fact of the pavement we have there, yes. Again, those are all things that will be discussed with the county when we make a county application.
I have a question for Mr. Kennel also, regarding the left turning lane. By Trudy Lane, to make a left into Trudy coming from Route 9, will that left interfere with the left coming from Cross, going into the site plan? Because they're not aligned.
So the intent here is that it's called a two-way left turn lane.
Right, but
So basically, it's a strike median and allows left turns in both directions.
so that would work if it's aligned. If they're not aligned, how are you going to accommodate that? The intersection's not aligned.
That's why it's treated as a two-way left turn. In other words, it's not striped and
It's actually like that a little bit further up the road, westbound towards Prospect Vines, that development.
Well, they have dedicated left turn lane.
It's two-way striped over there.
A portion of it is, yes. So basically, it acknowledges the number of driveways and intersections. So that's why the county has developed it to be a two-way left turn lane.
That kind of seems like asking for trouble right there, because there are a lot of cars lined up there trying to turn into the school. People that are trying to make the left onto Trudy or northbound, they're gonna.
Hold on, that's a comment, that's not a question, there's no answer
This
required.
proposal is common practice, for example, anybody familiar with Route 35?
Mr. Kennel, we can't counterpoint every comment, that was his comment.
Okay.
No question pending.
Okay.
Board gets it.
So just to summarize, so basically this application does not require and does not have in the plan the left turn lanes into the school or onto Summer, and that will be discussed with the county.
That is correct. They may have left turn lanes, but we haven't filed the county application yet.
So it's possible you'll get approved over here and the county will say no way without the left turn lanes.
It's possible.
Okay. Are there being any sidewalks being built either on Prospect or on Summer Avenue due to there are children that I'm sure from these developments that will be walking, etc.
They said, they testified that on sidewalks.
It's very hard to hear everything that's going on.
Sidewalks on all the frontage.
That was the first thing Brian said.
Even, and that you, Mr. Larry, even including on 3.01, right?
That is correct. All the way on Summer Avenue, all the way on Prospect, the entire frontage.
Okay. The Simcoe Hall, is this going to be also a wedding hall? Because we have one down the block.
No. It's stated code.
Like I said, it was very hard to hear.
Please don't scream. Okay, finish up, please.
Sir, ask your questions, don't pay attention to that.
So my understanding is that any school buses, they're only going to be allowed to enter and exit from Prospect. They're not going through lot 3.01, which would mean they'd be going through that hazardous industrial building with children. Am I correct?
Only to and from Prospect Street. No other access to school buses.
Is there going to be a fence in between the two properties? I heard there's some stuff that. Yes. Okay. Okay, so that's all my questions for the professionals. I just wanted to make one more comment to the planning board. I know the planning board has recently became a lot more strict with giving out variances to applicants. I commend the board for that. I am living on Prospect Street for 6 years now. When my development went up in 2009, we were the only one in that vicinity for Massachusetts going to cross. And since then, we have the development further down in Prospect Vines, and what just went up next to us, the Prospect Square. Combined, I would say we have approximately 200, 250 houses, multiplied by the basements, multiplied by the cars. We're talking about probably 2,000 cars that we now see on Prospect Street. So it's turning into a mini Pine. We got one light by Williams and Prospect. The county, even though they made turning lanes, they did not expand it, widen it properly, and make dedicated straight left and right. So it's a little bit of a disaster. I hold my breath when I make certain turns over there. And I think the county has plans on converting Massachusetts and Prospect blinking light into a real light. But that is a hill, and then from there going westbound towards Cross, it does drop. So by this building and the intersection over here of Summer and Capitol Lane, which is where my development, the entrance is over there, and that's the single entrance. You do have a little bit of a visibility issue, especially since the speed limit over there is 45. And I really strongly urge the board, even though this might be under their jurisdiction, but if they have the applicants requesting other variances, so you can kind of use this and to request it from them in exchange for giving variances, that they do discuss, and it should be a prerequisite or a conditional approval that there is a traffic light that's put up over here besides for Massachusetts and Prospect, because there are a lot of trucks and industrial and tractor trailers and everything going by Massachusetts across over there, that entrance, and on Summer, and the roads need to be widened to accommodate school buses and all that traffic and these tractor trailers moving. There should be a dedicated turning lane, a traffic light with dedicated turn signal, because I'm there every morning and I can tell you, it used to be I can get out of my development in 30 seconds. Now it's a challenge. Even my intersection of the entrance to my development, you could technically squeeze the striping over there to have a dedicated turning lane to make the left turn, but it'll be tricky for buses that are trying to pull in. So most of the time, any cars that are turning left going westbound towards Cross will hold up the whole entire traffic, and that can take forever. So I really think it's going to be necessary. We have the wedding hall there down the block on Summer Avenue, so we have a lot of traffic at night as well.
We get the idea, there's a lot of traffic. We normally get 4 minutes.
Right. You just
I
repeat
think you
it.
made your point, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Very much. Anybody else in the public would like to be heard? Seeing none, we'll close the.
If I can recall, Mr.
Go ahead.
There was some comments made, and Mr. Jackson said it wasn't our time to respond to the comments. I just want to make it clear in about 2 minutes. Thank you. Mr. General, are there any variances sought by reason of anything to do with traffic or driveways or parking size?
No, there is not.
The dimensions of the parking into the driveway, 24 feet, meet local standards.
That's correct. And they'll meet county standards for the one-way operation. Correct.
And as a county road, we, being the board, the public, the applicant, landowner, they're all bound by the county because this is a county road.
That's correct.
And all of the things that have been raised, that is the nature of the driveway, one-way, two-way, left allowed, where they pull in, where they pull out, that's all going to be determined by the county.
Correct.
And or if they were to approve it, it's going to be subject to that approval.
Correct.
And we're going to have to make our case before the county with separate engineering staffs, traffic experts, etc.
Correct.
The situation that we intend to have here, is it mirrored or mimicked anywhere else in work?
Yes, I mean, it's a common technique with the two-way left turn lane. It's like recognized nationally as well throughout the state.
When the county did the master plan you referred to, the developments that both Mr. Levi and Mr. Leroux questioned existed and were figured in the county's numbers and perspective?
Well, each application was reviewed on its own merits. Some of the earlier ones, like Prospect Lines, for example, didn't have the same, isn't as wide there as it is here. So some, oh, they were accounted for, correct.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any board members have any other questions? Seeing none? No? I would ask for a motion on this application.
Can I have that motion? Hold on for one
Yes,
second.
go on.
I just, Mr. Chairman, I
Okay,
have some conditions that I put in here. I don't know.
Okay, before that, Mr. Sable has a question, before we go for a motion. I'm sorry.
You asked for variance of the width of the property, that's 75 feet. 70, yes. 70. And how many people do you have in this hall after this? It's 4,000 square feet. How many people do you fit up the maximum?
Rabbi,
That's like Yiddish,
big is this room?
But forget about that,
This-
just the max occupancy of the Simple Hall.
The maximum, we estimate somewhere between, for, not a wedding, that's out, would be 100 to 150.
But you have an architectural drawing for the Simple Hall, right? So what's the occupancy of the Simple Hall? It's on the drawing.
A thing or two about architecture, he can handle that one.
It's on the drawing, so we don't have to approximate, say exactly, what's on the drawing?
What is the sign in the room gonna say?
It's a fire marshal.
What's the sign in the room gonna say?
4,000 square feet.
Brian, it's 4,000 square feet, how many people fit in 4,000 square feet?
100 to 150.
Okay, that's your answer. That's what you're maxing out on.
So we're anticipating 100, at the end of that bar mitzvah, whatever it is.
Maximum
all-
150.
All 150 cars. There's only 150 cars will go through. Assuming they're coming separate because it's a men's event. So we're gonna have all 150 cars going through right and left through one entrance on the Prospect Street. Is that correct?
Yes.
That doesn't make sense to me. That makes way too much traffic going through a single walk drive through.
I'm missing what makes it sense for the, not sense for the bar mitzvah at night, but it works in the daytime for the school bus.
Because what he's saying is that the school buses are staggered.
I've been to
Staff
a lot-
goes separate.
I've been to a lot of events in Lakewood.
You went to this too?
And the people always come in staggered.
You will come late, right?
I've never been to any where, first of all, nobody's there on time, because I come on time and the parking lot's empty. And then they stagger in one by one. And you got, when I'm leaving an hour later,
That's when people are coming.
people coming in. So if they all came at the same time, like some of the Goyish things, then you'd have a problem, but it's not a Goyish situation.
I still think that it's dangerous, and I think we should somehow have access towards summer. We are dividing this property into two. If we can somehow have a 24-foot easement or something that we can have to drive through.
Mr. Sable, that is one of the things Mr. Flannery at first had said, an access easement across lot 3.01. Now, the advantage to that is that would run with the land, and that access easement would stay in place for the other lot in perpetuity. So if your concern is that you want to have another means of egress to always be there, one of the ways you could do it is you can make it a site plan requirement on 3.01 and require a permanent easement.
They don't own 3.01.
Well, it's being subdivided. That's part of the you know.
It's the same owner, they want to divide it.
Yeah, there's a subdivision.
One at a time.
Sir, please.
So the subdivision should be subject.
Yeah,
or
they're
allowed
kind of
only to have access to the
you can
property.
make that a condition, and you can make a condition of this approval that this applicant obtain that easement.
And let me ask you.
You can make it a condition of the subdivision.
Is it feasible with elevations?
It's feasible with elevations, and the applicant who's keeping lot 3.01 is okay to giving the easement, but he wants to have a gate on it, so that it's only open at night, because he doesn't want during the day when there's schools, people coming in and going. And the concern was for the Simcha Hall is at night, so as long as the board's okay,
Why don't we want some of the school staff to come in from the summer?
You don't need it.
It's not.
It's still 170 cars, it's something everybody's.
Commercial building, it works now, and I think you wanted to turn the kids, didn't want, sort of walking around, so we have the gate available for the hall at night.
business and the school are separate, the Simcha Hall and the business.
There's a daycare.
It's the other corner.
I have a question also. On
Mr.
page,
Grumberg.
on page C6, on phase 2, you have 12,000 square feet of future area that's not described. Can you describe what that future area is?
Where did you see that? Which page?
Page C6.
Can you show us where that is on the site plan? Is that in the architecturals or is that in the site plan? He said it's 12,000 square feet.
You don't want the
It's in phase two.
Okay, what?
The lower floor of phase two will be assembly room and a larger lunchroom for the children, and an extra room for the kids to be able to play or plays.
No central hall.
No simple.
How big is that room? 12,000 square feet.
Mr. Flannery, are all the parking counts and all the criteria, does that take into account phase two? It should, right?
Yes, it does.
So-
And again, the room that he's describing is for the students and the faculty there to have a place for recreation and eating.
So that's already counted into all the
That is
calculations?
counted into the calculation.
Mr. Flannery, so are we restricting
Mr.
the
Grunberger, you
simple
got that?
hall to 4,000 square feet?
Yes.
That's the max?
Yes, that's the max.
Okay, so we should know the calculation, okay. Mr. Say, we have any other questions?
Repeat what the client is ready to do regarding an access to Summer Avenue. He agreed to what?
He agreed to provide an access, but it'll be a gated access, so it can be closed during the day, and after school for the,
Simcha.
use of the Simcha Hall, the gate can be opened up.
Is there gonna be a gate throughout the property?
No,
Completely open?
the two properties are adjoining, so at some point there'll be, an access provided where the levels line up, and at that point there'll be a gate, so the gate will be on the property. And both sides will be able to close the gate at the appropriate times, and then it'll be open, they'll have an agreement, and your professional can review that agreement.
How do you get over the retaining wall without a road coming in?
But they'll have to pick the point where, connection can be made.
Good luck.
Spot back here where the retaining wall is very close to height. Make it necessary.
Do you have any, Mr. Say, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, is any ballard or something proposed in front of the playground? As far as curb, what's gonna be over there? Is there gonna be curb and sidewalk?
There's a curb, yeah, curb.
And throughout the side of the building, on the east side of the building, phase one, there's no sidewalk over there. We're connecting the front property and the back property whatsoever.
There's no intention for anybody to walk on that side of the building.
I can see kids and adults going in front and back. Why not?
Along
The
there?
sign-
It's a very steep drive coming from so
Can we add the sidewalk there? Is it doable? The sidewalk going from the front of the building to the back of the building, just not on the side.
from the front of the back on the east side, drop 14 feet. It'll be a very steep, it's almost set, you almost need to set stairs to put a sign like this. It's not safe. Again, there's no reason for children to be walking over there and pick up off the private. So there's no reason for any children to be walking from the bus and the front of the property around to the back.
And they can do that through the building. It will be the same way for them.
Any other board members have any questions? Mr. Jackson, you want to go over the point? You have
Well,
one
I
question?
had written down a couple conditions. Obviously, they went through point by point on the review letter, so anything in the review letter would be complied with. But there were a couple specific ones that I think came up tonight. The fence will be upgraded to the satisfaction of the board engineer. The plan will be amended to reflect the same.
The fence has to be strong enough for students to get a
That's why I said upgraded.
Right.
The plans will be amended to reflect the abandonment of the loading dock on lot 301, and the subdivision plans in 301 will make similar notations. The refuse location will be moved, and the compactor will be moved, and the plans will be amended to reflect the same. The playground will be moved per the representations at the meeting, and the plans will be
John,
amended.
not,
Not the playground, the trash.
The trash.
compactor.
I thought Mr. Doyle also said the playground would likewise be moved. If that's not it, I'll take it out.
No, the playground is, what I said was that we would separate them so that one was on one side of the parcel and the other was on the other side.
We'd like to see the trash compactors in the northeast corner.
So I'll say the playground will be separated.
Separate. For the satisfaction of the,
For the representative and the plan, yes.
Engineer.
Yeah, and those are really the only extra add-ons I had, and then I added on to, the subdivision one, that the loading dock was abandoned.
And you have one more, there's the easement now.
Along 501.
I know we talked about that.
They agreed to an easement.
There will be a,
Yeah, I was gonna ask that's up to, it affects both of us, so we each want to ask of the board, if that's the board
I can hold the
determination.
ball. Give me a second. Mr. Grumberg, would you like opening to Summers Avenue now, please?
Yeah.
Mr. Garfield, Mr. Franklin, Mr. Sable. Okay, so basically, you know, what do you? Okay, I do. Basically, everybody wants it.
Okay, the board wants the owner application, the subdivision agrees they'll be able to, they will.
Okay.
The easement, we just asked that it be limited for tonight, so they use the gate that the school is closed during the day. School property.
Okay.
But the gate has to be open every time the school calls.
It'll be very easy, be quick. It'll be used for night, just after during the 9 to 5 business hours.
Okay. Okay. Is that all, Mr. Jackson?
well, there were also things we did for the testimony, for example, that the typical hall would not be used for school hours.
Okay.
But
Basically, everything is subject to what was represented
yes,
to the board.
they'll be required to abide by all the 900 students in the school,
Whatever.
where the buses will queue, where the traffic will circulate. You know, I couldn't put all those into here, but they'll be reflected, because they have to abide by the representations they.
Okay, thank you.
There's nothing we can do about the traffic lights, right? There's nothing we can do about the traffic lights. No, it's subject to.
We can recommend it.
We can recommend it, okay.
Would it balance for the existing playground? There's no sidewalk, no curb over there. Cars going in and out, and kids are playing. That's fence? No, the existing playground.
On 3.02.
3.01.
3.02 on the bottom left.
Out of the entrance. Please, thank you. Yeah. Very important.
Okay. I would
Bunch of them.
I would ask for a motion on this application.
I'll move, subject to all the requirements. Everything that Mr. Jackson. For the subdivision and for the school.
Okay, the motions for both.
The motion is to vote.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Flanton seconds. Is it okay? One motion for both?
I'm just wondering aloud, through you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Jackson, a couple of things. One, should they not be a separate vote on the subdivision and the site plan, and that the site plan approval for 302 are conditioned upon what we can do on 302?
On 301.
And with the exception of the access.
Okay. So you would prefer separate motions? Okay, so
Is the easement in the first, application or the second?
Well, I'm reciprocal, I have to put it in both.
Okay. So I'll move, to allow the subdivision.
I also have to add to the, excuse me, I have to add that the subdivision is contingent upon the school.
the school gets
Yes, the school,
approved.
yeah.
We had discussed that, Mr. Jackson, and the subdivision is a simple C2 variance. We're creating a lot. To tie that into the school.
The subdivision is contingent upon approving the amended site plan for the existing.
Yes.
So it all has to work together, subdivision.
I think you need one
Have the
motion.
school there, are you saying you might not build the school, or do you want to subdivide it?
We're saying that it should be two separate things, and it should be subject to the school being open. The school is gonna have certain responsibilities, this applicant is gonna have responsibilities, this applicant will have the cross-access easement, this applicant will do
The board will have to decide that. I mean, I thought that the case was premised on there being, the subdivision case is premised upon a school building there, 100% together in there a lot.
Correct.
Yes,
So maybe they're tied together, but that's on the board. Because one of the reasons that
It's a non-conforming lot.
Right, it's a non-conforming lot, and their premise for their C2 variance is that they're providing a school.
Right.
Well,
So,
the premise for the C2 variance was that we have a large property that has an unused portion of the property. I think if we came in here.
Well, that might not be persuasive to the board on its own.
Well, I've done a lot of applications in town, and I think the problem is that this applicant that's doing the minor subdivision is being penalized because he came in at the same time as the school. If the school hadn't been here and you came in and said, the zone says 3 acres, we have 3.4, we want to use this property, we want to do something productive, I don't think that the board would have any problem. We did it at the same time.
Make that application.
exactly.
But that's up to the board. I'm not gonna.
We did make that application. That was the application that was made. But we did the two of them at the same time to help the school out, and we don't.
Why is everybody standing in the front row with their arms folded?
I think they're showing support for me, you guys.
What's that, Mr. Flannery?
I would ask for a motion again on the subdivision, depending how you want to make it.
On the school.
Only with the school?
I would move to make it contingent on the school.
Contingent on the school? Okay, so that's a motion, and we have a motion on the second. And that's only for the subdivision, right?
Only with the subdivision.
With the easement. With the easement. The roll call.
Yes, with the easement.
Roll call.
Mr. Kronberger.
Yes.
Mr. Garfield.
Yes.
Mr. Franklin.
Yes.
Mr. Zabel.
Yes.
Mr. Flansbrough.
Yes.
Mr. Herzl.
Yes.
Mr. Eisenman.
Yes.
Mr. Raffles. Yes.
Okay, now I would ask for a motion on the school.
I'll move again on the school with all of the.
Based on everything that,
Yeah.
what the commission said, we have a second on that.
Second.
Mr. Flansbaum seconds. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kronberger.
Yes.
Mr. Garfield.
No.
Gentlemen, this application hasn't been approved yet. You have to provide that. Mr. Garfield, no? Mr. Franklin.
Yes.
Mr. Zabel.
Yes.
Mr. Flansbrough.
Yes.
Mr. Herzl.
Yes.
Mr. Eisenman.
Yes.
Mr. Raffles. Yes. Thank you.
Mazel tov.
I would like to take the opportunity, just 1 second, in the name of all the people that were here tonight and the entire peering body from Benos Hadassah, to personally thank all the professionals, the board, and especially Mr. Jackson, the attorney, and Mr. Vogt, the engineer, and Mrs. Morris, the secretary, for all the efforts that they have put in to help the school. Thank you.
I'm taking a 5-minute break. Did everybody down there put any? Make a meeting? Make a meeting outside? Make it outside? Give me a 5-minute break.
We typically do, but it's up to you. Yeah, we'll probably go later. It's up to you.
5 minutes.
Leaving or you taking?
No, 5 minutes, 5 minutes.
Unbelievable. I'm close tomorrow. What? Yeah, no, don't stop me. Yes, they are.
Very late.
What do you think you're doing outside?
Gotta show something. Let's get up there. Let's get up there. Oh,
'Cause from Tom's River, so she's familiar with that neighborhood.
We will be there.
He'll call you when he can, trust me. He'll call you when he can, trust me.
They called the meeting back to order. The next application is SD 2314, David Herzog on 1052 West County Line Road. Terry, do you have any comments on this application? Okay, please be seated and quiet, everybody.
I don't at this time, Chairman.
It's the same,
As you recall, it was opened originally. The board acted on submission waivers at the prior hearing. There was testimony on the lot width variances. From what I recall, there was engineering testimony and costs. I think were in the planning testimony portion of the application.
For the object.
Okay, one second, before we continue, I'm sorry, Terry. Mr. Jackson, I just want to make sure that we have a quorum who was here at both meetings.
Yes, this morning, just upstairs to go get something that was training that was not going to use it.
Right, so I think let's make sure.
I know we spent a lot of time today trying to figure out who was eligible and wasn't.
I know I was here for both meetings. Mr. Isaacson, you were here for both meetings?
I was, yes.
One was, do you know the dates on both meetings?
May 5th and
May 20th, and March 20th, and May 22nd.
Okay, so,
And just out of noise, the applicant, because we had a discussion at the May 22th.
okay, please just state your name for the record.
Alan Weiss.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it, okay.
Attorney for the applicant. I prepared, or I had prepared, and delivered to the board, a written transcript of the March 20.
Okay, I want to make sure they read it. Okay, Mr. Grumberger.
I was here for none of the meetings. I read the March 20th transcripts, and I read the minutes from June 5th. I don't know anything about May 20th.
I might have the wrong date.
No, there was
I think it
one,
was March 20th.
March 20th and June 5th.
June 5th.
Oh, it's June 5th, forgive me.
June 5th.
So I
Okay,
read
so,
the minutes of the June 5th meeting and the transcript.
okay,
of March
thank you.
20th.
Mr. Garfield, were you here for both? You were here. Mr. Franklin, I think you were here for the June 5th, not the 20th? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's constantly here for both.
You can check the,
I'm calling Ellie right now.
she thinks that there's no regular Mr. Franklin. Mr. Sable, were you here for both? And where's Mr. Flansman? He left? Or he's still down?
No, he's not.
He's in the back? I think he was here for both?
No, I don't think so. I think that he indicated that he wasn't here for the March 20th.
Okay, well, let him finish himself. I don't want to You were here for both meetings, or you read any transcripts? One was the March 20th and one was June 5th.
I remember, Alex and Mr. York came, both meetings.
Okay, so.
The second meeting was upstairs, right? Yeah.
Yes, first meeting was down here.
So the only one questionable is Mr. Franklin, everybody else was here for both, or read the transcript.
So only those who heard the whole hearing can come to a vote tonight and be able to vote. My recollection, my review of it was where we left off. Mr. Weiss was finished. Mr. York had presented the testimony of your planner. Just the engineer. Just the engineer? And then, so you have two more witnesses.
And it is. That's why I bring it up. 10-9.
Okay. You don't need more than 5 minutes, do you?
5, 6 minutes, 6 minutes.
How long do you think you're looking?
15, 20 minutes.
Start the clock. It's only 4 o'clock.
15, 20 minutes each, and there's a number of members of the public that I do not represent that don't want to be heard on this. I only have one update.
Holly, what did you start doing today, Mr. Chairman?
I can go to 9:30. But I think out of courtesy of all the people who came out, we should at least hear them. I don't know. What do you
The thing
recommend?
is, the people in the audience might have questions or comments, or based on what the expert, the professional witness said. But you can hear them now if you want to do that.
They waited a whole night, I don't feel comfortable to send them in.
Okay, just if the people come up, they can make their comments.
Is there anybody from the public who wanted to be here tonight? You want, we got 2 people. Okay.
That's what it says.
Okay.
Right, make a decision on.
No, you don't.
You hear those questions?
Okay. I think we should continue and see how far we get. It may not be finished tonight.
We are continuing, so in the last meeting, we were put off, and then we were made the last night.
Because then the school till first.
Is there any way that we could be heard first in the next application? That way, if members of the public get to be heard quickly?
I will not be at the next meeting.
I don't know why you weren't here first tonight.
Yeah.
That makes two of us, I don't know.
Yeah.
4.
Because school, that's fine.
Yeah, right, you would have to leave.
Yeah. We should have heard it. Well, that's too bad, that's bad. Can't go so fire out.
Don't do that. You'll fall apart. if that happens.
I was getting there.
So again, my concern with you not hearing the entirety of this tonight is that someone's gonna be forced to read I don't know who, maybe none of you, would be forced to read a transcript again. I'd rather you hear the applicant, the objector's case
What?
live.
Mr. York would like to be heard in entirety and go for vote. And I don't know if we'll go to the stage.
I thought at the last meeting, Mr. York didn't want that because he didn't want the applicant to like re-spin.
Huh? No, I mean, we haven't even gotten yet, that's why I'm
No, I
saying.
know, but in this, the second hearing, we're against restarting.
Alan, what's?
Yeah, we didn't, I don't wanna restart, I'm saying, we haven't done anything yet, I'm saying, I'd like to start.
He wants
the
to-
whole thing.
start to
Before
finish.
he hears his case and then vote, he doesn't want it broken up. What would be the next date that, Mr. Herschel would be here, that we put this applicant on first and guarantee them first?
Second meeting in August, if there is a meeting.
The second meeting in August, I won't be here, and that may be the only thing, yeah.
Do we have any meeting, 1 second please, do we have, Ally, do we have any meetings scheduled? I know the first is August 6th, so I won't be here.
August
The-
7th.
August 7th, I'm sorry. And the next meeting is scheduled for when?
August 21st.
And you won't be here. Okay. Do we have anything on that agenda that night?
No, because we were putting it in its entirety. The only reason we're not at the end is it takes time, so we keep intentionally putting it.
Right.
Yeah, but if this is the second, I mean, this is the third.
I don't think I'm gonna be here the 21st.
So we just put the first at the next meeting.
Me
They
neither,
were first
not bad.
at the last one.
You're not here the 24th?
They were first at the last one, we
You have
cut
any
them off.
I'm going to the show the 24th, and I'm coming back the 7th or 8th. So, it's recorded. Terry, do you feel comfortable running if Valerie's not here?
like having Al here, but I think before. Unfortunately.
So before you talk about when Al's not here, is that August 21st you're talking about?
Yes.
That won't work for the objector. The objector's attorney has a prepaid vacation.
I'm not here.
Pay.
So.
Because you're not gonna finish.
So September 4th and September 20th are our September dates.
When's Rosh Hashanah? Check it. Yeah.
Fourth or 20th?
You wanna go?
Yeah.
That's the schedule.
Mr. Herzl?
Yeah.
Ally says that September 4th, there's nothing scheduled, so they should be scheduled first for September 4th.
And you have no schools down anymore.
What's the
We're
date?
finished with the schools.
Yeah, we won't have any schools coming in after the August meeting.
Right.
What's the Hebrew date? Something as well.
September 11th, the week before.
No, there
September
is no
4th.
September 11th date.
September 11th, we don't have meetings.
It's Rosh Hashanah.
Rosh Hashanah.
September 11th.
You said it's 4th, or?
There's nothing on September 11th. Our regularly scheduled meetings are September 4th and September 20th.
Right now, September 4th, that's nothing scheduled. So it's
Nothing is scheduled that far in advance. So the end of August and all of September are wide open.
Should we do the 4th?
If they're okay, I can make it the 4th, and then it should be the first one on the. Okay, it'll be only on the 4th.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, of the public, we apologize to you for this. You can see the board has a lot of demands on it. Is that okay, September 4th? Okay, go first.
Objection based on position, practice, and control. A lot of things. Now.
Yeah, because understand also the board is messed about.
I want to come to you for this.
Just 1 second, please. Just 1 second. Mr. Jackson, can we open up, if there's anybody from the public who would stay another few minutes, who wants to put something on the record? I don't mind listening to you.
I think that would be a reasonable method of asking my question.
Okay, I agree with that. Well, the best we can do at this point is to.
Unless there's anybody else in the public who'd like to
I want to know that
We hear that.
Is there anybody who would like to speak today before he gives testimony from the public? I just want to give you the courtesy.
So anyone who's not here tonight will not have to listen to tonight's recording. They didn't take any material while I was in the meeting, correct?
No, we do not have it. We just deciding who can vote.
September 4th?
I do.
So we'll be first on the agenda September 4th.
And Al, if I can ask you, please send out, make sure that everybody else listens to it. Al here.
Previous recordings, yeah, all I got tonight was Mr. Grunberger, who listened to both, so now he's eligible to vote. But, who needs to listen to recordings are Mr. Grappos, Mr. Franklin, Mr. Garfield.
And you have the March 20th meeting,
The transcript, I emailed it like 4 times.
No, I'm saying, and John's not on it, because he says he was here.
No, I looked at the recording,
John's
John
not there.
was not at that meeting.
John, you weren't there.
I watched the video, you're not there.
We're scheduling your calendar in reverse.
Can you listen to the recording, Mr. Franklin?
There's a video or there's a written transcript for March 20th, which I emailed out. I can send them again for Mr. Garfield and Mr. Franklin. So I have the video or you can read the transcript, whatever you prefer.
That's a good light reading in the background.
Send it.
Okay, no problem.
So, I would agree to carry this to September 4th. I will execute a consent for extension, and I would just like to know that we're going to do this without asking the applicant to do those.
Yeah, that would be, make the announcement.
And we will put you on number for the first on the application. Al, is that okay?
Yep.
Okay. So that would be 6 o'clock.
I'm usually not here at the first application.
It was.
But the first one.
Well, maybe you have enough time to plan.
I work already at the school year.
Ready to sleep.
but it sounds like this is gonna be a long.
Do we need a motion to move this on the board? Or just want to announce
I
it?
don't, just announce, I guess. Sure. Members of the public be advised that tonight's application SC 2314 for David Perstock has been tabled and will be carried instead to the September 4th, 2018 meeting, 6 p.m. this meeting hall. No further notice will be provided.
Okay. Thank you, and I'm sorry. I have a motion to approve the minutes. Second, all in favor? Aye. The approval of bills? All in favor? Aye. Adjournment? Move, can I have a movement on adjournment? Move. Second.
All in favor?
One second. They're an attorney, Chris? No slip of bar. One slip of bar. Are you in the next room? Your chair, let's wait a second. Allow me to rephrase. Allow.
And we have other.
Mr. Russell would like you to chair.